For 6 years, I believed the Greek Don chose his empire over me. Then he walked into my courtroom, took the witness stand, and looked at me like I was still the only woman he had ever loved. I was determined to expose him. Instead, I uncovered the lie that destroyed us, and learned Theron Kassaris was willing to surrender his empire, his freedom, and everything he had left, just to prove he had never betrayed me. This is my story. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Witness. Wealth could purchase silence. It could purchase loyalty, fear, and the kind of witnesses who suddenly forgot what they had seen when powerful men entered a courtroom. But it could not change the time a dead man stopped breathing. I faced the jury and pointed toward Nico Kassaris. Senator Everett Lang entered Suite Aurelia at 11:14 on the night of October 17. At 11:21, the defendant left that suite alone. At 11:27, Senator Lang was found dead. Nico sat motionless at the defense table. 34 years old. Beautiful in the careless, dangerous way powerful families often produce their younger sons. His charcoal suit fit as though he had come to negotiate a shipping contract rather than defend himself against a murder charge. I touched the control beside the lectern. The first crime scene photograph appeared on the courtroom monitor. A gold cufflink lay beneath the senator's open hand. The defendant's cufflink was discovered under the victim's body. The image changed. A crystal glass. A dark smear of blood. The private suite's electronic access report. His fingerprints were found on Senator Lang's glass. The senator's blood was discovered on the defendant's formal jacket. His security credentials opened the suite where the murder occurred. The final photograph showed a masked man dressed in black moving through the restricted corridor. A witness will identify that man as Nico Kassaris. I stepped away from the lectern and let the evidence remain behind me. Senator Lang had uncovered illegal activity moving through ports controlled by the Kassaris organization. He arranged a secret meeting with the defendant. He entered that meeting carrying evidence. I looked directly at Nico. He never left alive. The jurors watched me with the concentration I had spent years learning how to command. Wealth may purchase silence, loyalty, and beautiful lies. But it cannot change the time a dead man stopped breathing. Then you should have checked the time again. The voice came from the rear of the courtroom. Low. Calm. Devastatingly familiar. My lungs forgot their purpose. I turned. Theron Kassaris stood just inside the courtroom doors. 6 years had not softened him. They had refined every dangerous part. His black suit contained no visible ornament beyond a dark watch at his wrist. His hair was shorter than I remembered, disciplined away from a face made harsher by time. His shoulders seemed broader. His mouth remained severe, as if smiles were privileges he granted only when they could do damage. Then his eyes found mine. Burnt amber. The same eyes that had once watched me wake in his bed. The same eyes that had remained absent on the night I waited for him to prove that our relationship had not been a lie. A remembered trace of his scent moved through me, cedar, smoke, and the bitter citrus cologne that had lingered on my skin long after I left his penthouse. I buried the memory before it reached my face. Your Honor, the gallery is not permitted to comment during opening statements. Judge Harwood lowered his glasses. Mr. Kassaris, you will remain silent or you will leave my courtroom. Theron inclined his head. No apology. No explanation. He walked down the center aisle with the quiet authority of a man entering property he already owned. Nico glanced over his shoulder. Until that moment, the defendant had maintained the relaxed confidence of someone convinced his family would eventually protect him. Now his expression changed. Not relief. Warning. Theron did not take the empty seat directly behind his brother. He chose a chair at the end of the front row, positioned beside the jury box. From there, I could not question a witness or address the jurors without seeing him. It was deliberate. Everything Theron did was deliberate. I returned my attention to the jury. The evidence will prove that Nico Kassaris had the motive, access, and opportunity to murder Senator Lang. At the conclusion of this trial, the United States will ask you to return the only verdict that the facts permit. I allowed my gaze to pass over Theron without stopping. Guilty. He did not approach me when the court adjourned. He did not send a message. He simply returned the next morning. On the second day, Dr. Julian Cross testified that Senator Lang's death was consistent with an acute cardiac event triggered shortly before his body was discovered inside Suite Aurelia. Theron remained in the same chair. On the third day, the gala security manager authenticated the electronic report showing that Nico's credentials had opened the suite. Theron remained in the same chair. On the fourth, a frightened hotel employee identified Nico as the masked man he had seen leaving the private corridor. Theron did not watch the witness with the desperation of a brother hearing another nail driven into a coffin. He studied the access report, the timestamps, the medical photographs, the chain of custody records. And whenever Graham Holbrook entered the courtroom, Theron's expression became colder. Holbrook had been my mentor for 12 years. He had taught me how to control a hostile witness, how to build a case strong enough to withstand money and intimidation, and how to survive the enemies that came with prosecuting powerful men. He was also the United States attorney who had approved every charge against Nico Kassaris. Theron watched him as though he knew something I did not. I told myself the attention meant nothing. Theron understood pressure. He understood how silence could become an intrusion. He wanted me distracted, uncertain, remembering the woman I had been before I learned what he was. I refused to give him the satisfaction. By the fifth day, I had admitted the final government exhibit. The United States rests. Judge Harwood turned toward the defense. Call your first witness. Nico's attorney rose. The defense calls Theron Kassaris. A murmur rolled through the courtroom. My chair struck the prosecution table as I stood. Theron's name had appeared in a sealed supplemental witness notice that morning. The defense claimed his testimony implicated protected intelligence sources and potential criminal exposure. I had demanded the witness be excluded. Judge Harwood had denied the request. Theron rose from the gallery. This time, Nico did look relieved. Theron walked past the prosecution table without acknowledging me. That was worse than if he had stopped. He took the oath and settled into the witness chair. State your full name for the record, the defense attorney said. Theron Alexander Kassaris. Were you present at the midnight mass on October 17th? Yes. Did you know Senator Everett Lang? Yes. Did you know your brother intended to meet with him that night? Theron's gaze shifted briefly toward Nico. I learned of the meeting before midnight. Did you disclose that information to federal investigators? No, why not? Because Senator Lang was not meeting my brother so that Nico could kill him. He was bringing him evidence. I stood. Objection. Foundation. Sustained, Judge Harwood said. Counsel, establish the witness's personal knowledge. The defense attorney approached the stand. Mr. Kassaris, did Nico Kassaris murder Senator Lang? No, you sound certain. I am. Why? Theron looked at the jury. The government's timeline begins too late. The courtroom went silent. What do you mean? Senator Lang was already dying when he entered Suite Aurelia. Dr. Cross shifted behind me. The defense attorney continued. How would you know that? Because I saw the person responsible make contact with Senator Lang earlier in the evening. What kind of contact? A public greeting. One hand on the senator's wrist. A fountain pen in the other. Did anything unusual happen? The pen touched Senator Lang's skin. He flinched and rubbed the inside of his wrist after the person walked away. My fingers tightened around my pen. What happened next? 23 minutes later, Senator Lang entered the private suite to meet Nico. Did you see the person with the fountain pen again? Yes. When? During the period the government claimed Senator Lang was being murdered inside Suite Aurelia. The attorney paused. Where were you? Alone with that person in a private wine room beneath the gala. The air in the courtroom changed. Did that person say anything about Senator Lang? Yes. What? Theron's attention moved to me. That the senator would not survive the night. A burst of voices rose from the gallery. Judge Harwood struck his gavel. Order. The defense attorney stepped closer to the witness stand. Who was that person? Theron's expression closed. I will not answer that question. Mr. Kassaris, answering would expose me to potential charges involving obstruction, unlawful intelligence gathering, and conversations implicating senior officials of the United States government. On advice of counsel, I invoke my right against self-incrimination. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harwood struck the gavel again. Silence. I was already on my feet. Your Honor, the witness cannot selectively present an alternate killer, refuse to identify that person, and leave the jury with an accusation the government cannot test. Judge Harwood turned to Theron. Mr. Kassaris, you do not get to tell half a story merely because the remainder is inconvenient. It is not inconvenient, Your Honor. What is it? Capable of exposing a political conspiracy involving people who currently possess the authority to destroy evidence, witnesses, and this prosecution. No one moved. Judge Harwood held Theron's gaze for several seconds before turning toward me. Ms. Mercer, you may cross-examine within the scope of the testimony given. We will address the privilege issue outside the jury's presence afterward. I approached the witness stand. For the first time in 6 years, nothing separated Theron and me except polished wood and the oath he had sworn to tell the truth. Mr. Kassaris, you concealed your brother's meeting with Senator Lang. Yes. You withheld information from federal investigators. Yes. You allowed 5 days of testimony to occur before announcing that you supposedly knew Senator Lang had been poisoned. I allowed your office 5 days to reveal whether it had discovered the truth on its own. You expect this jury to believe you withheld evidence for noble reasons? No, the answer came too quickly. I stopped. Theron's voice remained calm. Noble motives are not required for truthful testimony. You are the head of the Kassaris organization. Yes. Your brother is facing life imprisonment. Yes. And you expect this jury to accept that you suddenly appeared because you are concerned about justice. I appeared because your case was built to collapse on top of you. A pulse began beating behind my eyes. You are not here to protect me. His expression did not change. That has never stopped me before. I ignored the answer. Did you manufacture this theory to protect your brother? No. Did you ever use our relationship to obtain confidential government information? A muscle shifted in his jaw. No. You expect this court to believe that a relationship with a federal prosecutor provided no benefit to your criminal organization. That is not what I said. Then let us be precise. I stepped closer. Did you ever use your relationship with me to protect the Kassaris organization? No, you were romantically involved with a federal prosecutor while members of your family were under investigation. Yes. You had access to my home, my telephone, and my private life. Yes. And you claim you never used that access. I claim I never used you. The words struck harder than they should have. I held his gaze. You expect this court to believe our relationship never benefited your family? No, Ms. Mercer. I protected my family from our relationship. Explain the distinction. He looked directly at me rather than the jury. I never used you to protect the Kassaris organization. I protected the Kassaris organization from my relationship with you. The courtroom fell silent. My voice became quieter. Why would your relationship with me endanger them? Theron did not hesitate. Because I would have burned everything my family built before allowing them to use you. For one dangerous second, the courtroom disappeared. I saw the terrace outside his penthouse. The chessboard between us. His hand around mine as he told me there were things he would destroy before he allowed them to touch me. I had believed him then. That had been my mistake. I turned to the evidence. You testified that Senator Lang was poisoned before he entered Suite Aurelia. I testified that the fatal act occurred before he entered the suite. What toxin was used? I did not identify one. Because you do not know. Because your medical examiner never completed testing for delayed cardiac agents. Dr. Cross went pale. I saw it. So did Theron. That information was not provided to the defense. It was not provided to you either. A small fracture opened in my certainty. I closed it. How did you obtain confidential laboratory information? I will answer in a protected proffer. To save your brother. To prevent an innocent man from being convicted of murder. Nico Kassaris is not innocent. Not of everything, Theron said. Only of this. Judge Harwood ordered the jury removed. What followed unfolded behind sealed doors. The defense produced a partial proffer containing details Theron should not have known: the missing advanced toxicology screen, an irregularity in the senator's blood sample, and an unexplained gap in the gala's electronic access records. The government laboratory confirmed that one of Senator Lang's samples had never completed the tests listed on the original order. The security report contained a timestamp that did not match the hotel server's internal clock. Each fact was small enough to explain separately. Together, they were enough to wound my case. At 4:17, Judge Harwood returned to the bench. This court is ordering renewed toxicology testing, immediate disclosure of the witness's protected proffer, and an evidentiary review of all electronic access records related to Suite Aurelia. Graham Holbrook rose beside me. Your Honor, the government objects to delaying a trial based on unverified claims from an admitted criminal actor. Your objection is preserved. Judge Harwood looked toward the defense and then at me. Proceedings are continued for 30 days. The jury will receive strict instructions not to consume media coverage, conduct independent research, or discuss this matter with anyone. We reconvene on August 23rd. 30 days. Before trial, Theron's attorney had offered the government a voluntary 30-day delay and access to unspecified evidence. I had refused. I had believed Theron wanted time to intimidate witnesses and dismantle the prosecution. Now the court had given him exactly what he wanted. I gathered my files without looking at him. But as Theron stepped down from the witness stand, he stopped beside the prosecution table. Close enough that the remembered scent of cedar and bitter citrus was no longer a memory. You should have accepted my offer, he said quietly. I looked up. You should have told the truth 6 years ago. Something dark moved through his eyes. I tried. Then he walked away. It was after 7 when I returned to my office. The outer suite was dark. My staff had gone home, leaving stacks of trial binders and abandoned coffee cups beneath the security lights. A single black orchid waited in the center of my desk. No vase. No delivery card. Only one impossible flower resting across the government's case against Nico Kassaris. A cream envelope lay beneath it. My name was written across the front in Theron's hand. I knew every severe line of that handwriting. Once, it had appeared on notes hidden inside my case files, on labels attached to bottles of wine, and across the first page of a Greek poetry book he had claimed I was too impatient to understand. I opened the envelope. There was one sentence inside. You left before I could answer you. This time, you will listen. Chapter 2 30 Days. Theron was halfway across the restricted courthouse garage when I caught up with him. Stop. My voice struck the concrete hard enough to turn the heads of two deputy marshals standing near the elevator. Theron continued walking. I moved faster, heels snapping against the gray floor. Theron. That stopped him. He turned beside a black sedan with tinted windows, one hand resting near the button of his suit jacket. His driver waited several feet away. Two other men stood near the garage entrance, positioned casually enough to appear unremarkable unless a person understood security. I understood security. I also understood intimidation disguised as elegance. You ambushed me in my own courtroom. Theron glanced at the marshals before returning his attention to me. You followed me into a secured garage to tell me that. I followed you because you turned a federal murder trial into theater. I testified. You concealed evidence until the defense had finished watching me build the case. I warned you. Your attorney sent a vague demand for a continuance with no supporting evidence. He offered you 30 days. He offered conditions. Everything has conditions, Sloane. The calm in his voice infuriated me more than anger would have. You manipulated the procedure. You invoked national security, refused to name the supposed killer, and made certain every reporter in that courtroom heard you discuss our relationship. His eyes sharpened. You asked the question. You knew what I would ask. Yes. And you prepared that answer. No, the denial came quietly. I have had 6 years to prepare that answer. Something inside me shifted, but I refused to let it settle. You are hiding evidence in a murder investigation. I am protecting evidence from the people who built the murder investigation. That is not your decision. It became my decision when your government placed my brother beneath a body he did not create. I stepped closer. You expect me to trust evidence controlled by the Kassaris organization? No, the immediate answer caught me off guard. Theron opened the rear door of the sedan, removed a slim black folder from the seat, and held it at his side. I expect you to distrust me intelligently. I distrust you perfectly well. You distrust the man you decided I was 6 years ago. That has made you careless with the men standing beside you now. Do not speak to me about carelessness. A faint muscle moved in his jaw. There it was, the first fracture in his control. I pressed harder. The last time I trusted you, information from a protected investigation reached members of your family. His hand tightened around the folder. And the last time I trusted you, private confessions I made in my bedroom appeared in a federal affidavit bearing your signature. The garage seemed to become impossibly quiet. I stared at him. What affidavit? Theron's expression closed again. The opening vanished so quickly I almost believed I had imagined it. Not here. You do not get to make an accusation like that and walk away. You did. The words landed between us. 6 years of anger rose in my throat, sharp enough to become reckless. I wanted to demand the affidavit. I wanted to ask what private confession he believed I had repeated. I wanted to tell him that I had signed dozens of documents during the port investigation and never once used anything he had told me in confidence. But the marshals were watching. His men were listening. And Theron had already dragged enough of our past into public view. I folded my arms. What do you want? 30 days. You already have them. I have a continuance. I do not have your cooperation. You are not getting it. Theron held out the folder. Selected Kassaris shipping records. Access to my private intelligence concerning Senator Lang. My personal cooperation whenever you require it. I did not take the folder. In exchange for what? You investigate the evidence outside the chain that produced your case. You want me to conduct an unauthorized parallel investigation using information supplied by an organized crime leader. I want you to examine whether the evidence inside your authorized investigation was manufactured. And when I find something that implicates you, you follow it. You will not interfere. No, you will not pressure a witness, remove a document, or suddenly decide some truth is too expensive for your family. His eyes held mine. My final decision will not belong to you. I know. You expect me to believe that? No. I expect you to prove it. I looked at the folder but still did not touch it. I will not owe you. You have mistaken working beside me for belonging beneath me. His voice lowered. You never knew the difference. Heat moved through me, anger first, followed by something I refused to name. You are not offering partnership. You are trying to place me inside a debt you control. I am offering access to selected records. Yes. Selected by you. Until I know who inside your office can see what you see. There is no arrangement. Theron withdrew the folder. Then begin without me. He opened it and removed a single sheet of paper. A name and address were printed across the top. Daniel Voss. The hotel security manager who had authenticated Nico's electronic credential records under oath. Theron handed me the page. Ask him why the timestamp changed. I took it before I could stop myself. Did you threaten him? No. Did anyone acting for you contact him? No. How do you know he lied? Theron opened the car door. Because frightened men look toward the person they fear. Voss never looked at me. He entered the sedan. The door closed before I could answer. By 9 the next morning, Daniel Voss had recanted. Not all of his testimony. Just enough to fracture it. He contacted the prosecutor's office through his attorney and claimed he had been mistaken about the timestamp attached to Nico's access credential. The credential had opened Suite Aurelia, he insisted, but he could no longer confirm that the time displayed on the government exhibit matched the hotel's original server record. Graham Holbrook stood at the window of his office while I read the attorney's letter. The city spread beneath him in steel, glass, and controlled distance. Theron Kassaris reached him, Holbrook said. We do not know that. We know precisely what happened. Kassaris took the stand, created chaos, and now a government witness is changing his testimony. Voss requested protection before making the recantation. Which is exactly what a frightened witness does after being intimidated. It is also what a frightened witness does after lying. Holbrook turned. He was in his late 50s, silver beginning at his temples, his expression composed in the paternal way that had once made every difficult decision feel survivable. Sloane, do not allow Theron to make you question every person who stood beside you while you built this case. I question evidence. That is the job. Not when the questions are being selected for you by the defendant's brother. I placed the letter on his desk. Then I will select my own. Daniel Voss had been moved to a protected federal apartment across the river. His attorney sat beside him when I arrived. 2 agents remained outside the door, neither assigned through my regular trial team. Voss looked worse than he had on the witness stand. His shirt collar was damp. His hands would not stay still. I never saw Nico Kassaris use the credential, he said. You testified that his credential opened the suite. It did. The report said it did. Who generated the report? A federal technician. What technician? I never got a name. He arrived with credentials from the Joint Task Force. You allowed an unidentified technician to access the hotel's security system? He had authorization signed by your office. My stomach tightened. What did he give you? A printed access summary. He told me the data had already been verified against the hotel server. And had it? I thought so. You were the hotel's security manager. Why would you rely on an outside technician to interpret your own system? Voss looked toward his attorney. The attorney nodded once. Voss swallowed. My daughter has a congenital heart condition. Her insurance stopped approving an experimental treatment. I waited. 3 weeks before I testified before the grand jury, the outstanding balance at her clinic was paid. By whom? I don't know. How much? $86,000. And you did not report it. I tried to ask questions. 2 federal agents came to my office the next morning. What did they say? That accepting money connected to a murder investigation could make me an accessory. They said I could lose my job, my home, everything. They said my daughter's treatment would become evidence in a criminal case. Did they identify themselves? No. Did you see badges? Yes. Names? They kept them covered. I leaned forward. Did Theron Kassaris or anyone associated with his family ever threaten you? Voss's face lost what little color remained. I am afraid of Theron Kassaris. That was not my question. No. He never contacted me. Then who are you afraid of now? His eyes shifted toward the closed door, toward the federal agent stationed beyond it. The people who knew I questioned the timestamp before I told anyone. A coldness settled beneath my ribs. Was the timestamp altered? Yes. By whom? I don't know. The original server log showed an access event, but the time was different. 11:32, not 11:14. 11:32. 5 minutes after Senator Lang's body had been discovered. The credential could not have placed Nico inside the suite before the murder. Someone had used, or simulated, the credential afterward. Why did you testify to 11:14? The federal technician told me the hotel server clock had drifted 18 minutes. He said the corrected time was 11:14. Was that possible? At first, I believed it was. Then I checked the maintenance archive. The server had synchronized correctly all night. Why did you wait until now to recant? Voss looked at me with naked shame. Because Mr. Kassaris took the stand and said the case had been built to collapse on top of you. The exact words Theron had used. Voss continued. I realized they were not only framing his brother. They were arranging for you to take the blame when someone found the altered record. When I returned to the office, Holbrook closed the door behind me. You interviewed Voss without the trial team. He requested protection. You are emotionally compromised. The accusation was delivered gently, almost regretfully. That made it worse. He admitted the access record was altered. After being influenced by Kassaris. He says no one from the family contacted him. And you believe him? I believe the payment to his daughter's clinic can be traced. Holbrook's mouth hardened. You will not interview another government witness outside the prosecution team. Is that an order? It is protection. For you and for the integrity of this office. Years earlier, I would have heard only concern. Now I heard the control beneath it. The sealed packet arrived that evening. No orchid. No handwritten memory. No request to meet. Only a tamper-evident envelope delivered by a retired federal courier whose credentials checked out before he disappeared back into the elevator. Inside were 12 pages of technical analysis. Nico's Gala credential had been cloned. Not before the midnight mask. After federal agents seized it. The credential entered evidence at 2:13 the morning following Senator Lang's death. 4 days later, its encrypted identifier was copied through a Department of Justice evidence terminal. The user history had been erased. The deletion required senior authorization. I read the report twice before calling Theron. He answered before the second ring completed. You were waiting. Yes. Who produced this analysis? A source I trust. That is not an answer. It is the answer you receive until you agree to work with me. I rose from my desk and stared through the dark window. You are leveraging justice to force yourself back into my life. No, you are withholding the identity of a source in a federal murder case. I am protecting that source from the same people who altered your evidence. You expect me to accept information without knowing where it came from. I expect you to verify it. And if I cannot? Theron's voice lowered. You can. But first you must stop believing truth is only legitimate when it arrives wearing a federal seal. I looked again at the authorization record. Senior access. Federal terminal. Evidence altered after entering government custody. One piece. Silence answered me. I will examine one piece of evidence with you. That does not make this a partnership. No, a partnership requires trust. I could almost see him standing at the penthouse windows, city light cutting across that severe face. This is war with shared enemies. The call ended. 10 minutes later, an assistant knocked and entered carrying a black orchid. I stared at it. A cream card rested between the petals. You believed the signature because it was yours. You never asked who placed the paper beneath your hand. My office seemed to tilt. I had never told anyone that a signed affidavit had ended my relationship with Theron. Not my investigators. Not Holbrook. Not even the therapist I had seen for 3 months after leaving New York. Only Theron knew. And according to him, the affidavit had destroyed us both. Chapter 3 Everything She Touched. The address Theron sent me did not belong to a warehouse, private club, or one of the shipping offices the Kassaris family controlled along the river. It belonged to his penthouse. I called him before leaving my office. No, he answered without asking what I meant. The evidence is here, Sloane. Move it. The original mirrored copy of the gala security server is secured inside my private vault. Then bring it to the courthouse. And allow the person who altered the government's evidence to watch it enter the building. You suggested working together. That does not require meeting in your home. I offered you a private club, which you control. A secure warehouse, which you also control. A pause followed. You rejected every location I controlled. Now you object to the one place I know the people behind this conspiracy have never penetrated. You cannot know that. I know every person who has entered my penthouse since you left. The quiet certainty in his voice unsettled me. I will bring an agent. No, you do not dictate the terms of a federal investigation. And you do not bring another federal employee into the only secure location available until we know which federal employees manufactured your case. I stared at the technical analysis spread across my desk. Nico's cloned credential. A deleted user history. Senior Department of Justice authorization. Daniel Voss's frightened admission that someone inside the government had paid for his daughter's treatment and forced him to lie. One ho. As long as you require. I require one. You always underestimated how long the truth takes. The call ended before I could answer. 2 armed guards met me inside the private elevator lobby of the Kassaris building. Neither asked for identification. They already knew who I was. That should not have surprised me. It did. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Theron waited several feet away. No jacket. White shirt. Dark trousers. Sleeves folded once beneath his elbows. The sight of him dressed so simply struck with more force than the immaculate suits he had worn in court. This was not the public don protecting his brother beneath a judge's scrutiny. This was the man who had once stood barefoot at these windows, drinking coffee while I read case files on his couch. I stepped from the elevator. The doors closed behind me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The penthouse had changed. And it had not. The walls had been repainted in a warmer ivory. A modern sculpture occupied the space where an antique cabinet had once stood. The lighting was softer, the security panel newer, the windows reinforced with glass thick enough to withstand an explosion. But the emotional center of the home remained frozen. The black grand piano stood beside the windows. The veined marble fireplace still divided the formal room from the library. The terrace chair I had claimed during our first month together remained angled toward the skyline. A marble chess queen rested on the shelf beside the fireplace. The repaired fracture ran through its center in a thin silver line. My gaze stopped at the bar. The same bottles of wine remained inside the glass cabinet, including the French Cabernet I preferred and Theron disliked. There were newer vintages behind it. The bottle at the front was 6 years old. "You still drink that?" I asked. "No, then why is it there?" Theron's attention moved over my face rather than toward the wine. I did not preserve the apartment for sentimental reasons. Of course not. I walked farther into the room. The penthouse held no obvious trace of another woman. No feminine coat left near the elevator. No second perfume on the entry table. No photograph turned discreetly away. No evidence that anyone had entered these rooms and attempted to replace what had existed before. That proved nothing. Theron Kassaris was wealthy enough to keep women in homes across the city without allowing them to cross this threshold. I moved toward the kitchen. A chipped white coffee cup sat beside the espresso machine. The crack near the handle had been repaired. I picked it up. "You kept this." "It remains functional." "It cost $8. You complained for 3 weeks when I tried to throw it away." "That was 6 years ago." "I am aware of the passage of time. You claim none of this is sentimental, but you repaired a cheap coffee cup." Theron came closer. The air changed before he reached me, carrying cedar, smoke, and bitter citrus. I never claimed the strategy was successful. I set the cup down carefully. "Where is the server?" "In the vault." "Then let us examine it." Theron crossed toward the private hallway. I followed, trying not to remember that I knew where every door led. The first opened into his office. The second concealed a security room. The third led to the bedroom where I had spent 11 months convincing myself I could love a dangerous man without becoming collateral damage. I stopped at the threshold. Theron continued toward a biometric panel at the far end of the corridor. "You may wait in the office." "I am not waiting anywhere unsupervised in your home." One dark eyebrow lifted. "You believe I have hidden federal evidence inside the bedroom." "I believe you hide evidence wherever it benefits you." "Then search." He pressed his hand to the scanner. Steel locks disengaged behind the wall. While he entered the vault, I turned toward the bedroom. The door was open. I should not have crossed it. I did anyway. The room was darker than I remembered. New curtains framed the windows. The bed had been replaced with one lower and broader, covered in slate linen. But the wardrobe doors remained the same. One stood slightly open. Ivory fabric showed through the narrow gap. My pulse stopped. I crossed the room and opened the door. The dress still hung inside. Silk. Narrow straps. A soft draped neckline. The faintest shimmer woven through the skirt. I had worn it the last night I was happy here. I had planned to tell Theron I loved him. Instead, Graham Holbrook had summoned me to his office and shown me surveillance reports, the altered recording, and evidence suggesting Theron had deliberately pursued me for information. I returned to the penthouse wearing that dress and carrying the knowledge that every intimate moment between us might have been an operation. Theron had not been home. I had left before he arrived. The dress should have disappeared with every other ruined thing from that night. My fingers touched the silk. Searching for evidence. Theron stood behind me. I withdrew my hand. Why do you still have this? You left it. I left other clothes. I disposed of them. But not this. No, why? His gaze moved from the dress to my face. You left with everything except the things that mattered. My throat tightened. You do not get to decide what mattered to me. I was referring to what mattered to me. The answer held no seduction. No attempt to soften the years between us. A wall safe stood open behind him. Theron had left it exposed while retrieving the security drive. I saw the perfume first. A square crystal bottle with a gold cap. The bottle I had believed lost during the frantic hours when I packed my belongings. Beside it lay a stack of clipped newspaper articles and printed case summaries. My cases. My convictions. My promotions. 6 years of public victories organized in precise chronological order. An affidavit rested beneath them. And beside the affidavit sat a small black ring box. Unopened. My body went still. Theron followed my gaze. You intended to propose. It was not a question. Yes. The word was blunt. Almost cold. When? The night you disappeared. My eyes returned to the ivory dress. No, I purchased the ring 3 days earlier. You never said anything. I intended to. Then why didn't you come after me? Theron crossed to the safe and removed the affidavit. He held it out. I hesitated before taking it. The first page carried the seal of the Federal Port Corruption Task Force. The second summarized information concerning Kassaris shipping routes. By the third page, the language became intimate. Not romantic. Private. Theron's fear that Nico would be killed if he tried to separate from the family. The location of a hidden ledger his father had used. The private name of a shipping intermediary Theron had mentioned once, in darkness, after making me promise the conversation would never leave his bedroom. Details no federal investigator should have possessed. My signature appeared on the final page. Perfect. Convincing. False. I did not write this. Theron watched me. I never provided these statements. Your signature says otherwise. My signature was copied. That is what I am beginning to consider. Beginning. His jaw hardened. 6 years ago, any other person who placed this document in my hands and then claimed innocence would not have survived the conversation. I met his eyes. But I did. Yes. Why? His voice lowered. Because some part of me wanted to believe you before you ever denied it. The affidavit trembled once in my hand. I tightened my grip until it stopped. You never gave me the chance. You left a message telling me not to contact you. That is not what I wrote. Silence stretched between us. The truth hovered close enough to touch, but neither of us yet possessed enough evidence to hold it. Theron took the affidavit from my hand and returned it to the safe. He did not touch the ring box. The server. The mirrored copy occupied an encrypted drive housed inside a secure terminal in his office. Most of the recovered footage matched the government's exhibits. Senator Lang greeting donors beneath the ballroom chandeliers. Nico crossing the west corridor. Theron disappearing toward the private wine rooms. Masked guests filling every camera angle with black silk, gold feathers, and jeweled anonymity. I compared the footage with the access records on my tablet. The first discrepancy appeared 42 minutes before Senator Lang entered Suite Aurelia. A block of surveillance data had been removed. Not corrupted. Deleted. I expanded the server history. The command was remote. Theron stood behind my chair. Close enough that I felt the warmth of him along my back without contact. "Can you identify the source?" he asked. I opened the deletion log. The authorization belonged to Aegis Federal Cybersecurity, a private contractor with high-level access to government evidence systems. I knew the company. They managed the Meridian Initiative. Theron's hand settled on the desk beside mine. "What is that?" "A federal port security program. Cargo screening, threat detection, interagency intelligence. The same port Senator Lang was investigating." "Yes." The word came slowly. Senator Lang's inquiry had been presented to my team as an investigation into criminal infiltration of federal ports. Kassaris infiltration. But if the government contractor assigned to protect those ports had deleted footage from the gala before the senator died, the conspiracy extended beyond one crime family. Beyond organized crime. Perhaps beyond my entire task force. Theron leaned closer to examine the metadata. His shirt brushed my shoulder. Every nerve in my body registered the contact. I moved away too abruptly. His gaze lifted. "You brought me here deliberately." "Yes." "You knew what I would find in this apartment." "I knew you would find the server. The dress. The perfume. My cases. The ring." Understanding entered his face. "You believe I preserved this place to unsettle you. You sent black orchids into my federal office with messages about our relationship. Do not pretend you are above emotional manipulation." Theron straightened. "You are giving yourself too much credit." Anger flared hot and immediate. "Then explain it." He looked around the room. At the piano. The repaired chess queen. The wine neither of us drank. When he spoke again, the control in his voice had thinned. "I kept the rooms because changing them would have meant accepting you were never coming back." The confession pressed all the air from the office. I gathered my tablet and the copied server logs. "You succeeded." "At what?" "Unsettling me." I walked toward the elevator before he could answer. Theron did not follow. He did not try to stop me. That restraint disturbed me more than his pursuit would have. My phone began vibrating before I reached the lobby. One alert. Then another. Then 6 more in rapid succession. News sites. Internal messages. Missed calls from my office. I opened the first headline. A photograph filled the screen. I was leaving Theron's building 6 years earlier, my hair loose, his black coat fastened around me. The next image showed us kissing inside his private car. Another showed me entering the penthouse shortly before a federal operation against a Kassaris associate. Someone had documented the relationship from the beginning. Someone had kept the photographs sealed for 6 years. And now, hours after I agreed to examine Theron's evidence, they had released them. The headline stretched across the screen. Federal prosecutor's secret affair with Kassaris Dawn exposed. Chapter for the woman he intended to keep. By 8 the next morning, the courthouse had become a feeding ground. Reporters crowded the front steps, packed the security entrance, and waited beside the underground garage. Satellite vans lined the street. Every screen inside the federal building displayed some version of my face beside Theron's. The photographs had multiplied overnight. In one, I entered the Kassaris building with my hair wet from the rain and Theron's hand against my lower back. In another, we kissed inside his private car. A third showed me leaving the penthouse wrapped in his black coat. The worst had been taken on the morning federal agents raided a warehouse belonging to one of Theron's associates. I had left his building less than 2 hours before the operation began. The photograph did not show that I had known nothing about the raid. It did not show that I had been assigned to a separate port corruption inquiry. It showed only a federal prosecutor leaving the home of a suspected crime lord before federal agents moved against his organization. That was enough. Half the city believed I had protected Theron while we were lovers. The other half believed I was prosecuting his brother now because he had broken my heart. Both versions made me corrupt. I entered through a secured employee entrance, but reporters spotted me before the door closed. Ms. Mercer, did you provide Theron Kassaris with confidential information? Were you assigned to investigate his family while sleeping with him? Is the Nico Kassaris prosecution personal revenge? Did you conceal the relationship from the court? A reporter forced her arm between the closing doors. Were you his informant? The security officer pushed her back. The door sealed. My reflection stared at me from the polished metal. Composed face. Straight shoulders. Ivory blouse buttoned to the throat. A woman who looked as though she had not spent the night watching strangers dissect the most intimate year of her life. My phone vibrated. Department-wide notice. The Office of Professional Responsibility has initiated a formal ethics review concerning United States v. Kassaris, ****. A second message followed. Report immediately to U.S. Attorney Holbrook's office. Graham stood behind his desk when I entered. The television on the wall had been muted, but the banner beneath my photograph remained visible. Prosecutor's secret Mafia affair. He switched off the screen. You should have told me. I disclosed the relationship 6 years ago. You disclosed that you had become personally involved with an individual connected to a broader port investigation. You did not identify Theron Kassaris. You told me not to place his name in writing until the counterintelligence review was complete. And you interpreted that as permission to conceal it forever. I was transferred out of New York. I had no involvement in a Kassaris prosecution until this case. You built the case against his brother. From evidence reviewed and approved by this office. That will not matter publicly. It matters legally. Graham came around the desk. He had removed his jacket. His sleeves were rolled neatly to his forearms, the way they had been during every trial crisis of my career. Years ago, the sight had reassured me. It meant he was preparing to stand beside me and solve the problem. Now I wondered whether the performance had always been intended to make me feel protected. The department will announce your temporary removal from the trial team. No, Sloane. The access record was altered. The medical testing was incomplete. A government witness has admitted he testified from a report supplied by an unidentified federal technician. And the person guiding you toward each discovery is Theron Kassaris. The evidence either holds or it does not. This is no longer about evidence alone. It is always about evidence. His expression softened. That paternal disappointment had shaped half my career. You are too close to see what he is doing. He entered your courtroom, reopened the most damaging relationship of your life. And within days you began questioning your witnesses, your colleagues, and the institution that gave you the authority to prosecute him. I am prosecuting his brother. Do you believe the distinction matters to Theron? Yes. Graham studied me. The certainty of my answer seemed to trouble him. He moved back behind the desk and opened a thin folder. If you recuse yourself voluntarily, I can contain some of the damage. Contain it how? Your pension remains protected. Your title stays intact during the review. Once this passes, there are other positions. Appellate work. Main justice. A judicial nomination in a few years. He spoke as though my future were a collection of objects he could place back into my hands if I behaved. And Nico's case. A new prosecutor takes control. Using the same evidence. The evidence will be reviewed. By the people who approved it the first time. Graham's mouth tightened. This is not the moment to become defiant. If I withdraw now, the manipulated evidence remains inside the case. Whoever altered it gets exactly what they wanted. Theron gets exactly what he wanted if you stay. What is that? To isolate you from the institution that gave you power. The words found the fear he intended them to find. Theron had always understood how to make a room feel smaller around me. Now the courthouse corridors were filled with people who lowered their voices when I passed. Colleagues who once asked for my advice avoided my eyes. My access to several trial databases had already been restricted pending review. The institution I had served for 12 years was closing around me. And Theron was the only person offering an open door. I hated Graham for making me see it. I hated Theron more for making it true. I am not recusing myself. Graham's expression became still. Then I may not be able to protect you. I did not ask you to. I left before he could answer. The press found Theron outside the courthouse shortly after noon. I watched the coverage from an empty conference room. He descended the stone steps surrounded by black suits and camera flashes. He wore no overcoat despite the wind. One hand remained near the button of his jacket. His face revealed nothing. Questions struck from every direction. Mr. Kassaris, did Sloane Mercer provide information about federal investigations? Was she working for your family? Did she help the Kassaris organization avoid prosecution? Theron stopped. His security team stopped with him. A reporter thrust a microphone toward his face. Was Sloane Mercer your federal informant? Theron looked directly into the camera. Sloane Mercer was never my informant. She was never my employee, my source, or my weapon. Another reporter called from behind the barricade. Then what was she? For the first time, something changed in Theron's expression. Not softness. Something more dangerous because it had survived too long to be mistaken for nostalgia. She was the only woman I ever intended to keep. The clip spread across the city before he reached his car. By the time I found him in a private courthouse corridor, it had been viewed more than 4 million times. Theron stood alone beside the tall arched windows, speaking quietly into his phone. He saw me and ended the call. You had no right. He slipped the phone into his jacket. To deny that you betrayed your office. To announce our relationship to the world as though I belonged to you. I did not claim you. You told the press I was the woman you intended to keep. Yes. You made the scandal more intimate. It was intimate. His calm ignited every anger I had carried into the corridor. You could have said the photographs were misleading. They were not. You could have said the relationship was brief. It lasted 11 months. You could have said it meant nothing. Something hard entered his eyes. That would have been a lie. It would have protected me. No. It would have protected your reputation by allowing them to reduce you to a disposable woman I once used. And now they will say I prosecuted your brother because you abandoned me. I did not abandon you. Do not rewrite what happened. You left. Because of what you did. What you believed I did. The distinction stopped me. Theron stepped closer. I denied the lies, Sloane. Not the relationship. You turned it into a declaration. It was a declaration 6 years too late. I looked away. Beyond the windows, reporters remained gathered on the courthouse steps. You should have denied all of it. His voice dropped. It was intimate. That was the part neither of us was brave enough to defend. I felt his hand before he touched me. His fingers lifted toward the fine gold chain at my throat. Once, a small black stone pendant had hung there, a gift he had given me after our first month together. I had stopped wearing the pendant when I left him, but I had never stopped reaching for the empty chain when I was afraid. Theron's thumb brushed the place where the stone had once rested. My breath caught. Do not touch me. His hand fell immediately. No argument. No attempt to seize what I had denied him. The instant obedience should have relieved me. Instead, the restraint in his face felt more intimate than the touch. I meant what I said, he told me. That is the problem. I walked away before he could see how deeply the declaration had landed. The photographs had been cleaned before publication. Not merely enhanced. Processed through a federal imaging system that embedded an invisible archival watermark in every exported file. I found it shortly after midnight. The mark appeared as a string of microscopic pixel variations inside the lower corners. No public news outlet would have recognized it. I did only because the same watermark appeared on counterintelligence photographs I had reviewed years earlier. The images had come from a sealed federal archive. I opened the archive authorization registry. 5 senior officials had access during the period the photographs were collected. Graham Holbrook had supervised the archive. I requested the current access log. The response came 20 minutes later. Record unavailable. Data corrupted during scheduled security migration. I read the message twice. Then my private phone lit with an incoming file from Theron. No greeting. No demand. A mirrored backup of the archive's external access traffic. The records showed that the sealed file containing my photographs had been opened 48 hours before the leak. The authorization came from Graham Holbrook's executive credential. I carried the printout to his office before sunrise. He was already there. He glanced at the page and exhaled through his nose. My credential was cloned. The archive log was corrupted. Which supports the conclusion that someone covered their intrusion. The same explanation is being used for Nico's gala credential. His gaze sharpened. You believe I leaked the photographs? I believe your credential accessed them. Sloane, if someone is capable of cloning federal evidence credentials, why would mine be immune? It was reasonable. That frightened me more than a poor lie would have. I want the original surveillance file from 6 years ago. What file? The recording that convinced me Theron used our relationship to obtain investigative intelligence. Recognition passed across his face too quickly for me to catch. That material is classified. So were the photographs. Someone has already weaponized them. I will request authorization. I already did. I left him with the access record. The recording arrived that afternoon through the ethics review portal. Theron's voice filled my office. She trusts me. She tells me everything. Those words had ended us. 6 years earlier, Graham had played them twice and then stopped the recording before I could hear anything else. I uploaded the file into forensic audio software and isolated the frequencies. The first cut appeared after trusts me. A change in room tone. A missing breath. The second came before everything. The sentence had been assembled from separate moments. My hands went cold. I removed Theron's voice and amplified the background track. A faint mechanical ticking emerged. Then 3 delicate chimes. I knew that sound. I had heard it during late-night strategy meetings, promotion discussions, and every private conversation I had held inside Graham Holbrook's office. His antique brass clock chimed 3 times at the quarter hour. The recording that destroyed Theron and me had been edited inside my mentor's office. Chapter 5: The Midnight Dance. The invitation arrived in a black envelope embossed with the silver crest of Aegis Federal Cybersecurity. The company whose remote authorization had deleted 42 minutes of surveillance from the Midnight Mask was hosting a political fundraiser at the Beaumont Hotel. Cabinet officials, senators, defense contractors, and the private executives responsible for protecting the nation's ports would all be gathered beneath one roof. Officially, I could not question any of them. The ethics review had restricted my access, and Graham had ordered me not to approach another witness outside the prosecution team. Theron offered another method. We would attend together. Not as prosecutor and reluctant source. As former lovers who had reconciled beneath the pressure of public scandal. No one will believe it, I told him. We stood in the private dressing room of a Kassaris-owned hotel suite 2 floors above the fundraiser. Theron adjusted the cuff of his black formal jacket. The entire city watched me announce that I intended to keep you. That does not mean I took you back. The photographs show you entering my penthouse. To investigate evidence. The reporters were not invited upstairs to verify that distinction. I looked at myself in the mirror. The gown Theron had arranged was black rather than ivory. Sleek silk followed the line of my body before falling into a narrow train. No glitter. No softness. Nothing resembling the dress still hanging in his bedroom. A woman dressed for an operation. Not a memory. Theron crossed the room carrying a thin gold necklace. A small black stone rested at its center. What is that? Our recording device. I have my own. Yours was issued by the federal government. So we are investigating people capable of manipulating federal evidence. His gaze held mine in the mirror. You will wear mine. I should have objected to the command. Instead, I lifted my hair. Theron stepped behind me. The air changed as his body neared mine. He fastened the necklace slowly, his knuckles brushing the back of my neck. The black stone settled above my collarbone. The microphone is inside the setting. Press it twice to signal distress. Once to mark a conversation for immediate extraction. His fingers remained against my skin for 1 unnecessary second. This evening is an operation. Not a date. Theron lowered my hair over my shoulders. Our dates had fewer federal felonies. I looked at him through the mirror. They had different felonies. The faintest curve touched his mouth. It disappeared before I could decide whether I had imagined it. The fundraiser had been designed to resemble the Midnight Mask. Guests wore elaborate masks of gold, silver, and black beneath chandeliers dripping with crystal. A string quartet played from a raised platform. Waiters moved through the ballroom carrying champagne while men who controlled government contracts donated obscene sums to charities whose boards they also controlled. Theron wore a simple black mask. Mine was gold, delicate enough to leave most of my face exposed. His hand rested at my waist as we entered. Cameras immediately turned toward us. Whispers followed. He drew me closer, making the movement look intimate. You are enjoying this, I murmured. Your discomfort. The performance. Theron's thumb moved once against the silk at my waist. I have never needed to perform wanting you. The words tightened something low inside me. I searched the ballroom instead of answering. Dr. Julian Cross stood near a wall of white orchids, speaking with an Aegis executive and 2 senior officials from the Department of Justice. The medical examiner had gone pale when Theron mentioned the missing cardiac agent screening in court. Since then, Cross had avoided my calls and claimed through counsel that he could not discuss the Lang autopsy during the continuance. He sees us. He is looking for an exit. Do not block him. I know how witnesses behave. Sloane. You know how frightened criminals behave. They are often the same people. We separated near the dance floor. Theron intercepted the Aegis executive while I followed Cross through a velvet curtain into a private conservatory. He stopped beside a marble fountain. You should not be here. Neither should you. I have nothing to say. The original toxicology screen indicated an unusual cardiac agent. Cross's eyes moved toward the curtain. I signed the official report. You altered the official report. His face tightened. I pressed the black stone once. Senator Lang's blood showed evidence of a delayed cardiac compound. The result appeared in the first screening, but not in the report presented to my trial team. The sample was contaminated. Who told you that? No one. Then you reached the conclusion yourself. He looked away. Dr. Cross, an innocent man may spend the rest of his life in prison because you changed a medical finding. You do not understand what they threatened. Explain it. His breathing became shallow. The first sample registered a compound I had never encountered in a homicide case. It produced arrhythmia and vascular collapse, but not immediately. I ordered a confirmation test. What happened? Holbrook's office contacted the laboratory directly. They said there were chain of custody concerns and ordered a retest from the secondary vial. Did the retest occur? The secondary sample disappeared. A chill moved through me. Who removed it? I don't know. Why did you alter your report? 2 investigators visited my home. They showed me financial records from my private practice. They said I could be charged with Medicare fraud and lose my medical license. Were the records legitimate? Some billing mistakes existed. Nothing criminal. But enough to frighten you. He looked at me then. They knew my wife's treatment schedule. They knew which school my niece attended. They told me the first result was contaminated and that repeating it in an official report would be professional misconduct. What laboratory handled the sample? Cross hesitated. Federal Biomedical Analysis Center. Arlington facility. I pressed the stone once more, marking the name. Who instructed you to change the report? I never received a written order. Who contacted you? A deputy from Holbrook's office. Name. Cross stepped backward. I have said too much. The conservatory curtain opened. Theron entered. Behind him, 2 men wearing silver masks watched from the ballroom. Holbrook's political allies. Theron's attention moved from them to Cross. You should return to your guests, Doctor. Cross left without another word. Theron offered me his hand. What are you doing? We are supposed to be reconciled. I obtained what we needed. And they are watching us leave a private room with the medical examiner. The quartet changed songs. A slow waltz began. Theron drew me onto the dance floor before I could object. His hand settled against my back. Mine rested on his shoulder. The masks around us blurred into gold and shadow. You found the laboratory. Yes. And Holbrook's office ordered the retest. Yes. We were right. We have an accusation from a frightened witness. Not proof. You always did require evidence long after the truth became obvious. And you always mistook certainty for proof. He guided me through a turn. My body remembered his rhythm before my mind could resist it. 6 years earlier, at another private gala, Theron had taught me to dance in an empty ballroom after the guests departed. I had stepped on his shoes, accused him of moving too quickly, and made him promise that neither of us would lie while he held me this way. His gaze sharpened as though he remembered the same night. You once promised never to lie while dancing with me. That was before I learned you were using me. His hand tightened at my waist. And what will you believe when you discover I was not? The question moved through every defense I had left. Theron drew me closer. The music softened. His mouth was inches from mine. The black mask made his eyes appear darker, more dangerous, but I could still see the man beneath it. The man who had kept my dress. The man who had purchased a ring. The man whose voice had been cut apart inside Graham Hallbrook's office and rebuilt into a weapon. I rose slightly before I realized I was doing it. Theron's breath touched my lips. The altered recording sounded again inside my memory. She trusts me. She tells me everything. I stopped. Theron did not close the remaining distance. He allowed me to step away. But his hand remained around mine. You still stop for the lie, he said quietly. One day you will move for the truth. I left the ballroom alone. It was part of the cover. Theron would remain inside for another 15 minutes while I departed through the private parking structure. Anyone watching would believe the evening had ended badly, preserving the image of two former lovers unable to decide whether they hated or wanted each other. The parking level was nearly empty. My heels echoed between concrete pillars as I approached the government sedan assigned to me. The engine started remotely. A dark utility vehicle pulled across the aisle and blocked my exit. The rear doors opened. Two men stepped out. Neither wore a mask. I reached inside my evening bag for my phone. The first man moved faster. He caught my wrist and twisted. I drove my knee into his thigh, tore free, and struck the black stone on my necklace twice. The second man seized me from behind. I threw my weight backward, driving both of us into the side of the sedan. His grip loosened. I turned and raked the edge of my palm across his throat. The first man recovered. He grabbed my hair. You are coming with us. I drove my heel down onto his foot and reached for the compact weapon strapped beneath my gown. Headlights flooded the garage. A black sedan struck the utility vehicle hard enough to force it sideways. Theron was out before the engine stopped. His security team spread across the level. The attack ended quickly. One man ran and was tackled near the ramp. The other reached beneath his jacket before Theron drove him against the hood of my sedan. Theron's hand closed around the attacker's throat. The man's face darkened. Theron. He looked at me. There was nothing civilized in his expression. Do not kill him. His grip remained in place for one long second. Then he loosened it. Not mercy. Obedience. Theron's men restrained the attacker while I searched his jacket. A federal credential fell into my hand. Federal Protective Service. Is it authentic? Theron asked. It appears to be. I unlocked the man's phone using his thumb. The first screen displayed my approved DOJ travel route. The next contained the fundraiser's private security plan. Then I found a photograph of a legal pad resting on a polished desk. Graham's antique brass clock stood in the background. The picture had been taken inside his office suite. Theron saw it over my shoulder. You are coming to my estate. No, his face became dangerously still. Sloane. I will not be hidden while they erase evidence. You were nearly forced into a van. And now we have one of the men who tried. My estate is outside the city and protected. It also places me completely under your control. Theron stepped closer, anger held behind every measured breath. Then choose. What? The estate. My hotel's secured residence. Or the penthouse. I stared at him. He wanted me removed from danger, but he had placed the decision in my hands. No command. No threat. 3 doors. I looked at the attacker's phone again. The gala evidence was already at the penthouse. The mirrored server, the clone credential analysis, and the affidavit were all there. The penthouse. Theron nodded once. He removed his jacket and placed it around my shoulders without asking. This time, I did not refuse it. His security team transferred the attackers to federal agents outside my regular chain of command. Theron's technician copied the phone before surrendering it. We reviewed the metadata during the drive. My travel route had been released through an internal security request. The request carried Graham Holbrook's personal authorization code. Theron looked at me from the opposite seat. I held the phone tighter. For 6 years, I had believed Graham saved me from the most dangerous man in my life. Now someone using my mentor's authority had sent 2 federal officers to take me. And Theron Kassaris was the man bringing me somewhere safe. Chapter 6: The message she never received. The penthouse doors closed behind us shortly after midnight. Theron's security team remained downstairs with the copied phone and the 2 men who had tried to force me into the van. Federal agents outside my regular chain of command had taken custody of the attackers, but I no longer knew whether a federal badge meant protection or merely better access to me. Theron removed his jacket from my shoulders. The movement exposed the torn side of my gown. His gaze fixed on the ripped silk, then moved to the bruises forming around my wrist. Something violent entered his face. They did not succeed, they touched you. I noticed. He looked toward the elevator as though reconsidering his decision to leave the attackers alive. Theron. His attention returned to me. Do not make me regret asking you to spare them. You asked me not to kill one of them. That included both. You should be more precise. I almost laughed. The sound caught somewhere beneath the fear and exhaustion. Theron disappeared into the bedroom and returned carrying a white shirt. Your dress is torn. I have worn worse. Not in my home. He held the shirt out. It was one of his. Fine white cotton, broad through the shoulders, carrying the faint cedar scent that had followed me through 6 years of unwanted memories. I took it. When I returned from the bathroom, the shirt fell to the middle of my thighs. I had rolled the sleeves twice, but they still covered part of my hands. Theron stood at the dining table. He had removed his formal jacket and tie. His sleeves were folded beneath his elbows, exposing the dark watch at his wrist. Evidence covered the polished wood between us. The forged affidavit bearing my signature. The edited audio recording. The surveillance photographs leaked from the Federal Archive. The Kassaris marker found beside my damaged car 6 years earlier. Printed copies of Theron's encrypted communications. And the handwritten message I had left on the final night of our relationship. I stopped. That is not my note. Theron looked at the paper before him. It was delivered to my penthouse after you left. I crossed the room and picked it up. The handwriting resembled mine. The slant was correct. The narrow loops. The way I crossed the final letter in a sentence too hard when I was angry. But the words were not mine. You were useful until you became dangerous. Do not contact me again. My fingers went cold. I never wrote this. You said the same thing about the affidavit. Because both are false. Theron's eyes held mine. What did your message say? I looked toward the original note preserved inside an evidence sleeve on the opposite side of the table. He had obtained it somehow after the investigation reopened. The paper carried my handwriting, rushed and uneven from the night everything collapsed. I read it aloud. I know what you did. If any part of us was real, tell me the truth before I leave tonight. Theron did not move. You asked me to come to you. Yes. I never received this. And I never received the note in your hand. 6 years of hatred shifted beneath my feet. Not vanished. Shifted. You said in court that you tried to answer me. Theron opened an encrypted file on the tablet. This was sent from my private account at 11:43 that night. The message appeared. Meet me at the rooftop conservatory. I have proof that someone inside the government is manipulating the port investigation. Do not speak to Holbrook. Do not trust anyone who claims I used you. I love you. Come to me, and I will tell you everything. I read it twice. The words refused to become real. I never saw this. I waited until 2 in the morning. I was at the train station. Theron's expression changed. Only slightly. Enough. You had already left the penthouse. I packed after I wrote the note. I thought you would come before I reached the station. I was waiting at the conservatory. And I was waiting for you beneath the departure board. The cruelty of it entered the room quietly. 2 people sitting in separate places, each believing the other had chosen not to come. Theron opened the routing history attached to the message. My communication left the private server. Before reaching your device, it was diverted through a federal surveillance relay. Who authorized the relay? He enlarged the digital record. The approval originated from a classified server managed by the Port Corruption Task Force. Graham Holbrook's executive authorization appeared beside the command. My mentor had controlled the system that intercepted Theron's answer. The same man who had summoned me to his office, played the altered recording, shown me the false intelligence reports, and warned me that Theron had built our relationship to penetrate a federal investigation. He knew I had asked you for the truth. He knew I intended to give it to you. He replaced my note. And removed my answer. I looked across the table at the evidence of 2 different betrayals constructed from our private lives. The affidavit had convinced Theron that I used his confessions to advance a federal case. The recording had convinced me that he used my trust to protect his family. Holbrook had not merely separated us. He had ensured that neither of us would risk asking the other for an explanation. You should have come after me. Theron's eyes hardened. You ordered me not to contact you. You believed a piece of paper over everything you knew about me. You believed a recording. I had reports. Surveillance. The attack on my car. And I had your signature beneath things I had told you in my bed. Anger moved between us because grief was too dangerous. You could have found me. I did. The words stopped me. For 6 months, I tracked every person involved in the attack against you. The Kassaris marker was real, but the operative was not one of mine. What happened to him? He died in a staged robbery 2 days later. A sick chill settled through me. You knew. I knew someone wanted you to believe my family had threatened you. And you still let me go on believing it. I believed you had handed my secrets to federal investigators and then arranged your disappearance before I could confront you. You thought I was capable of that. I thought you had already done it. My voice broke through despite my effort to control it. I was frightened. So was I. The admission sounded wrong in Theron's voice. Not because he was incapable of fear. Because he had spent his life ensuring no one ever saw it. I had evidence telling me the man I loved had chosen his empire over me. Then someone forced my car off the road and left your family's mark beside the door. And I had evidence telling me the woman I intended to marry had turned my family's secrets into a federal weapon. Neither of us had survived the separation untouched. I had rebuilt myself into someone Theron could never deceive again. Every promotion, conviction, and courtroom victory had become another wall between me and the woman who once believed him. I built my career by becoming the opposite of the woman who loved you. Theron's expression tightened. I built my empire around never needing anyone again. My gaze moved toward the bedroom. The dress. The perfume. My chipped cup. The engagement ring he had never offered. Then why did you keep everything? His eyes returned to mine. Because hatred never convinced me you were gone. The last barrier between us cracked. I crossed the distance before I could examine the decision. My hands caught the front of his shirt. His mouth met mine with 6 years of restrained fury. There was nothing gentle in the first kiss. It tasted of accusation, grief, and every answer that had arrived too late. Theron's hand closed around my waist, pulling me against him. The other rose to my face, holding me with a care that contradicted the force of his mouth. I kissed him harder. Not because I had forgiven him. Because for the first time, I understood that he had not willingly abandoned me. His control broke for one breath. Then he stopped. Theron rested his forehead against mine, his breathing uneven. Tell me what this is. I tried to pull him back. He did not allow it. Theron. Are you choosing me, or are you grieving the years we lost? The question stripped away the safety of instinct. I do not know how to forgive you yet. I did not ask whether you forgave me. I am still angry. So am I. I do not trust everything you say. You should not. His thumb moved once along my cheek. Answer me. I looked at the man I had spent 6 years prosecuting in my imagination. I am choosing the truth we were denied. Theron kissed me again. This time, nothing between us was mistaken for forgiveness. He lifted me onto the edge of the dining table, sending pages of forged evidence sliding across the polished surface. His hands remained controlled even when the rest of him did not. Every time I stiffened, he waited. Every time I drew him closer, he gave me more. I unfastened his shirt with fingers that refused to remain steady. He said my name as though it had been locked inside him for years and the sound had finally broken free. We moved through the penthouse without speaking, past the preserved rooms and into the bedroom where too many ghosts had waited for us. The intimacy was not tender enough to become an apology. It was angry, desperate, and painfully familiar. Theron guided without taking my choices from me. When his restraint became too careful, I caught his face between my hands and told him I was not something breakable he needed to protect from himself. His control answered my challenge. Not with cruelty. With possession held just inside the boundary I gave him. For those stolen moments, there was no courtroom, no conspiracy, no forged evidence spread across the table. Only the man I had loved. Only the woman he had waited for. And the terrible knowledge that neither of us had chosen to lose the other. Later, I sat against the headboard wearing his shirt again. The room was quiet. No declarations had repaired us. No kiss had erased the affidavit, the recording, or 6 years of believing the worst. Theron disappeared into the dressing room and returned carrying a tortoiseshell comb. I recognized it immediately. I left that here. Yes. You kept my comb too. He sat behind me. You complained that no other comb worked properly. That was not permission to preserve it as evidence. I did not ask. The first pull moved carefully through the ends of my hair. His fingers separated a knot before guiding the comb through it. What are you doing? Removing what the evening left behind. He worked in silence for several strokes. Then he said, one question each. I glanced over my shoulder. What? For every section I comb, one question. Neither of us avoids the answer. That sounds suspiciously like an interrogation. You enjoy interrogations. When I am asking the questions. Theron gathered another section of hair. Why did you not come after me? I believe the attack was staged to protect your new identity after you entered federal cooperation. The answer cut. He drew the comb through carefully. Why did you wait at the station? Because I thought you would read my note and choose me. His hand stilled. For how long? 53 minutes. Theron resumed combing. When did you buy the ring? 3 days before you left. Had you asked anyone's permission? No, traditional Greek families usually expect that. I was the head of mine. I did not require permission to marry you. Despite everything, my mouth almost curved. Theron separated the final section. Why did you stop wearing the necklace I gave you? I thought every time you touched it, you were reminding me that I belonged to you. And now? I looked toward the gold chain resting on the bedside table. Now I think you were afraid I never would. The comb passed through my hair without resistance. Theron set it aside. He crossed to the fireplace shelf and returned with the repaired marble chess queen. The fracture remained visible, a thin silver line dividing the stone. He placed it in my hand. I repaired the stone. I left the fracture because pretending it never broke would have been another lie. I closed my fingers around the queen. The affidavit remained on the bedroom desk where Theron had brought the evidence after we left the dining room. I reached for it. The handwritten correction in the margin had bothered me since the first time I saw it, but exhaustion and anger had prevented me from examining why. A sentence identifying one of Theron's shipping intermediaries had been corrected in black ink. The writer had formed the capital G with an unusual closed loop. I knew that mark. Graham wrote every capital G the same way. In trial notes. Promotion recommendations. Handwritten corrections across hundreds of memoranda I had reviewed throughout my career. I compared it to the signature authorization printed from the intercepted message. The same closed loop. The same downward pressure at the end of the stroke. Theron watched my face. What is it? I held up the affidavit. The chess queen remained clenched in my other hand. My mentor wrote this. Chapter 7. Her mentor's hand. Morning entered the penthouse without mercy. Sunlight crossed the bedroom floor and illuminated Graham Hallbrook's handwriting on the forged affidavit as though the truth had been waiting for daylight. Theron stood at the windows already dressed. I held the affidavit beside 3 memoranda Graham had corrected by hand. The capital G matched. The narrow closed loop. The hard downward stroke. It is him. It is handwriting. He edited the recording inside his office. His authorization intercepted my message. His credential opened the archive. His code released your travel route to the men who attacked you. And every credential may have been cloned. You do not believe that. I believe what I can prove. Theron turned from the glass. You have spent 12 years learning his habits. You recognized his hand before I finished asking what you saw. That does not prove Graham murdered Senator Lang. It proves enough to move against him. With what? A comparison performed in your bedroom. A copied telephone. Records supplied by your private intelligence network? His expression hardened. We take him before he destroys the rest. We take him too early, and he calls this retaliation by a criminal family whose murder case is collapsing. Then I will not use the courts. The quiet threat struck harder than anger. No, Sloane. You are not touching him. He stole 6 years from us. He framed Nico. He sent men to take you. If you kill him before we expose the conspiracy, every witness disappears behind the story of a Mafia don murdering the prosecutor who charged his brother. Theron stepped closer. You are still protecting him. I am protecting the case. If we move now, he destroys the evidence, moves the witnesses, and lets the Meridian Compact dismiss everything as Kassaris retaliation. Nico remains the easiest man to sacrifice. Legal patience is merely fear dressed professionally. And killing the wrong person quickly does not make you decisive. Silence cut across the room. The intimacy of the night before had not made us gentle. It had made dishonesty impossible. I need to speak to Nico alone. No, you promised cooperation. I did not promise unrestricted access to my brother. He concealed his meeting with Senator Lang. I want the truth without you controlling the conversation. Theron's eyes darkened. You believe he is afraid of me. I believe he has spent his life deciding which truths you are permitted to hear. That struck. He looked toward the city, then picked up his phone. You have 1 hour. I will take as long as I require. The argument almost became something else. Then he arranged the interview. Nico entered the detention center conference room without his courtroom polish. No charcoal suit. No careless charm. Only a gray uniform and exhaustion beneath his eyes. Theron remained behind the observation glass with counsel. Nico looked toward the dark window. He hates this. He will survive. You do not know my brother as well as you think. I am beginning to understand that neither of us did. I placed Senator Lang's photograph on the table. Tell me why he contacted you. He believed I hated what my family had become more than I feared Theron. What did he want? Kassaris shipping manifests. Original ones, not the versions submitted to customs. Why? They showed undeclared cargo moving through federally protected ports. Cargo belonging to your family. Some. The rest belonged to defense contractors, political donors, and companies protected by the Meridian Initiative. Senator Lang intended to expose the government and the Kassaris organization at the same time. Yes. And you agreed to help him. Nico glanced toward the glass. I agreed to give him the manifests. What happened in Sweet Aurelia? His face changed. Lang arrived sweating. His hand shook when he gave me the drive. He said someone had touched him with a pen. What did you do? I thought he was panicking. Then he dropped the glass. Nico's fingers tightened on the table. He grabbed his chest. I tried to hold him up. He struck the side table when he fell. That is how his blood reached my jacket. You attempted to save him. Yes. Then why leave? He told me to take the drive. And you removed it from the crime scene. Yes. You lied to investigators. Yes. You allowed me to build a murder case around evidence you knew had another explanation. The drive implicated Theron. So you protected your brother. I protected all of us. The door opened. Theron entered despite my instruction. You protected nothing. Nico rose. You would have buried the drive. You should have brought it to me. So you could decide which crimes mattered. Theron stopped across from him. You risked a murder conviction without telling me. You would have protected the Empire before exposing the truth. The accusation landed cleanly. Theron's face revealed nothing, but I saw the wound beneath the control. Where is the drive? Nico finally looked at me. In the family chapel. A judge approved a tightly supervised transport to the Kassaris estate. The private chapel was built from pale stone, with blue glass above the altar and gold icons lining the walls. Beeswax candles burned beneath painted saints whose solemn eyes followed us inside. Nico approached a bronze icon of St. Nicholas in a recessed alcove. The base is weighted, he said. Theron's voice was cold. I know what it is. You do not know what is inside. Nico turned the icon over and pressed a narrow catch beneath its rim. The base opened. An encrypted drive lay wrapped in oilcloth inside the hollow compartment. Theron stared at it. You hid evidence beneath our mother's patron saint. She was the only person in this family whose judgment you respected. Theron moved toward him. I stepped between them. We do not have time. For a second, the chapel contained nothing but his anger and the knowledge that I had placed myself in front of it. Then he stepped back. We connected the drive to an isolated terminal in the estate's secure office. Water damage had corrupted several directories. Others were protected by layered encryption. What opened was incomplete but devastating. Payments from defense contractors to shell foundations. Cargo inspection exemptions issued through the Meridian Initiative. Political donations routed through subsidiaries. Federal ports marked with private authorization codes. And repeated references to an entity called the Meridian Compact. One folder remained inaccessible. Lang, contingency. The decryption froze at 12%. We need a forensic lab outside Graham's chain. My phone vibrated. Effective immediately. Assistant United States Attorney Sloane Mercer is placed on administrative leave pending completion of an ethics and professional conduct review. All credentials, case access, and prosecutorial authority are temporarily suspended. The secure terminal logged me out before I finished reading. A second message appeared. Report to U.S. Attorney Holbrook privately at 6 p.m. Graham did not offer me a seat. His antique clock chimed 3 times at the quarter hour, the same delicate sound buried beneath the recording that had destroyed Theron and me. You have made this very difficult, my administrative leave. Your refusal to separate yourself from Theron Kassaris. The evidence is compromised. The evidence has been attacked by a criminal organization with unlimited resources. Daniel Voss was pressured by federal agents. The toxicology report was altered. Nico's credential was cloned inside federal custody. And Theron guided you toward every discovery. Every answer returned to Theron. Graham folded his hands. There is still a way back. To the trial. To your career. I waited. Publicly separate yourself from Kassaris. Turn over everything he has given you. Testify that he exploited your history to manipulate your judgment. Allow this office to appoint a new prosecutor. And the ethics review. I can ensure the department understands that you were a target, not a willing participant. Protection in exchange for evidence. What exactly do you want? Every record. Every device. Any material connected to Senator Lang. He did not say drive. He did not need to. What happens to Theron? That depends on what you give me. What happens to me? You survive this. He had made the same promise 6 years earlier. I looked toward the clock, then back at the man who taught me how to build a trap without allowing the target to see its walls. I need time. You have until tomorrow. I left knowing precisely what his desperation required. Graham needed to believe I had chosen him again. I could not tell Theron. Graham had already accessed sealed archives, federal servers, my travel route, and private communications. Any telephone, vehicle, or room could be monitored. By noon the next day, cameras filled the Justice Department steps. Theron did not know I would speak. That was the part one could not permit myself to examine. My personal history with Theron Kassaris impaired my judgment during the continuance in United States v. Kassaris. Mr. Kassaris concealed evidence, manipulated my access to information, and exploited our former relationship. Questions erupted. I am cooperating fully with the ethics review. I no longer believe Theron Kassaris has acted in good faith, and I will provide all relevant materials to the appropriate federal authorities. Across the city, he would hear words shaped like the forged message that had destroyed us. You were useful until you became dangerous. Do not contact me again. When I returned to the penthouse, the guards allowed me upstairs without speaking. Theron stood beside the fireplace. I knew the ivory dress was gone before I entered the bedroom. The open wardrobe showed an empty space where it had hung. You removed it. I corrected an error. Theron, you have no further reason to remain here. His voice held no anger. That frightened me more. A small indicator pulsed on the security panel near the door, then went dark. Surveillance. His, Graham's, or both. I could not tell him. Not yet. You heard the statement. The entire country heard it. I had no choice. There is always a choice. A black orchid rested on the mantel beside a cream card covered in his handwriting. A message he had intended to send me before the press conference. Theron lifted the card and held it over the fire. You made yours. The flame caught the edge. I watched his words blacken before I ever learned what they said. I wanted to cross the room and tell him every sentence outside the courthouse had been bait. Instead, I forced myself to leave. Across the city, I entered Graham Holbrook's office carrying an empty evidence case. He looked up from his desk. I closed the door behind me. I can give you Theron Kassaris. Chapter 8: The Prosecutor's Trap. I can give you Theron Kassaris. Graham Holbrook did not react immediately. He remained behind his desk, silver beginning at his temples, both hands resting beside the legal pad where he had once corrected my arguments before important trials. His antique clock ticked behind him. The same clock hidden beneath the altered recording that had destroyed 6 years of my life. What does that mean? I placed the empty evidence case on the chair beside me. It means I finally understand what he was doing. Graham studied my face. Explain it. Theron did not take the stand only to protect Nico. He knew our relationship would become public. He knew the photographs would undermine my prosecution and isolate me from the department. You believe he arranged the leak? I believe he exploited it. I lowered my eyes at the right moment. Not enough to appear ashamed. Enough to appear wounded. He showed me selected evidence. He directed me toward witnesses he had already compromised. Every discovery made him appear more credible and this office less trustworthy. Graham came around the desk. You defended him when I warned you. I was wrong. The words tasted like ashes. They were the exact words he had wanted from me 6 years earlier. His shoulders relaxed. Only slightly. Enough to tell me that the frightened, ambitious woman he remembered had finally returned. What evidence does Theron possess? An original Kassaris shipping ledger. Graham's gaze sharpened. Original. Names, cargo codes, private authorization numbers, payments. Records that never reached customs or federal databases. Where is it? In one of his private vaults. You have seen it. No. But he told me enough to confirm it exists. Graham moved toward the windows. With that ledger, we could dismantle the Kassaris organization. We could dismantle more than that. He looked back. I continued carefully. Theron claims the ledger connects government contractors to undeclared cargo moving through protected ports. He wants me to believe federal officials were working with the Kassaris family while publicly investigating them. A familiar criminal strategy. Mix truth with fabrication until no one can identify which accusation is real. I can help you seize it. What do you want in return? Protection from the ethics inquiry. A statement confirming I was manipulated. Reinstatement after the hearing. Graham's expression softened into approval. There she was. The woman he believed he had created. You still have a future, Sloane. Not if Theron controls the evidence. No, he moved closer. Not if he controls you. My case notebook rested beneath my arm. Inside its reinforced spine, a narrow recording device captured every word. I placed the notebook on his desk. How do we handle the senator's missing evidence? Graham answered too quickly. You bring the drive to me with the ledger. I allowed silence to pass. I did not say there was a drive. Something changed in his face. Then vanished. Nico removed something from Senator Lang's suite. Your own investigation established that. My investigation established missing evidence. Not its form. You are splitting language to test me. That is what you taught me to do. His smile contained no warmth. Then consider the test passed. I walked toward the shelves as though trying to gather my thoughts. The evidence Theron showed me was incomplete. Because the drive was damaged. My hand tightened around the edge of the shelf. I had not told him that either. The device was damaged. Graham's eyes remained on mine. Electronic evidence recovered after a chaotic murder scene is rarely pristine. Nico says he removed it before the body was discovered. Nico has lied repeatedly. He also claims Senator Lang collapsed while they were speaking. He did. The words slipped free. Graham continued before I could respond. Nico attempted to hold him upright. He touched the senator's left hand, transferred blood onto his jacket, then took the evidence and fled. My pulse remained steady only through training. The crime scene report never stated which hand Nico touched. That detail had not appeared in any witness statement, autopsy summary, or courtroom exhibit. Only Nico and the person monitoring the murder scene could know it. I turned away long enough to mark the moment by pressing my thumbnail into the side of the notebook. The recording continued. What exactly do you need me to do? Return to Kassaris. Tell him the public statement was required by the department. Tell him you were protecting your ability to work the case. He may not believe me. He wants to. Graham said it with confidence. As though Theron's love were merely another weakness he had studied. Convince him to give you the ledger and Senator Lang's drive. Bring both to me before the evidentiary hearing. The hearing is less than 2 weeks away. Then you should not waste time. What happens after I deliver them? The department clears your name. Nico's prosecution proceeds. Theron's organization collapses. And the Meridian Compact. For the first time, Graham became completely still. What did you call it? I pretended uncertainty. The phrase appeared in one of Theron's files. I assumed it referred to the contractors. Forget it. Why? Because Theron is giving you language designed to make his accusations sound larger than his crimes. He closed the distance between us. Do not search that name on a federal system. Do not repeat it to anyone. The threat arrived disguised as advice. And if Theron refuses to give me the evidence? Nico is currently housed in a federal detention facility. I held his gaze. What does that have to do with the ledger? Federal custody is dangerous. Doors open incorrectly. Cameras fail. Prisoners with powerful enemies suffer accidents. Cold spread beneath my skin. You would threaten Nico's life to obtain evidence? I am telling you what Theron already knows. If he forces this conspiracy into public view, he cannot protect his brother from every consequence. That sounds like a threat. It is a deadline. Graham glanced toward the antique clock. Bring me the drive and the ledger before the court reconvenes. I picked up my notebook and the empty evidence case. He believed I was carrying an assignment. I was carrying his knowledge of the missing drive, its damage, the untouched crime scene detail, and a threat against Nico's life. Not a confession. But enough to tighten the trap. Theron found me before I reached the second meeting. I entered an abandoned federal records warehouse through a side entrance shortly after midnight. Graham had instructed me to leave a signal there once I secured access to the ledger. Rows of empty shelving stretched beneath industrial lights. Dust-covered evidence cages stripped of their contents years earlier. The steel door closed behind me. Theron stepped from between the shelves. He wore black. No tie. No overcoat. Nothing to soften the fury in his face. You returned to him. I stopped. How did you find me? You met Holbrook twice after publicly accusing me of manipulating you. Your intelligence network followed me. My intelligence network kept you alive when federal officers attempted to take you. You cannot be here. You stood before the country and repeated the betrayal he manufactured 6 years ago. Then you walked into his office carrying an evidence case. His voice remained low. Every word cut more deeply because he refused to shout. Tell me what you gave him. Nothing. What did you promise? Theron, what did you promise him? I opened the notebook and removed the narrow recorder from its spine. The small light continued blinking. Theron stared at it. I recorded him. His attention lifted to my face. I played the marked portion. Graham's voice filled the empty warehouse. Because the drive was damaged. Then, he touched the senator's left hand and finally, bring me the drive and the ledger before the court reconvenes. The recording ended with his warning about Nico's federal custody. Theron did not speak for several seconds. When he did, the anger had changed. You made me believe you had chosen him again. I could not risk Graham detecting our cooperation. You could have warned me. He has penetrated federal servers, courthouse archives, transport records, and private communications. I did not know which line was safe. So you recreated the precise wound he used to destroy us. Yes. The admission left no defense between us. It was cruel. Theron looked away. I watched you stand before those cameras and heard the same message he delivered 6 years ago. I know. No, Sloane. You understand the strategy. You do not know what it did. I moved closer. I needed Graham to believe I was frightened enough to return to him. And you needed my pain to make the performance convincing. Yes. The word nearly broke. I am sorry. His expression did not soften. But he listened when I explained the rest. He wants Senator Lang's drive and the original Kassaris ledger. I do not possess such a ledger. You do. Theron's eyes narrowed. Nico told me the original manifests existed. You would never allow records capable of destroying your organization to remain outside your control. You intend to give Holbrook my ledger. I intend to make him believe he can obtain it. That distinction will not protect me once the government sees what is inside. I know. The ledger would expose illegal cargo, bribed inspectors, criminal allies, and every concealed operation Theron had inherited or permitted. It could cost him his ports, his political protection, his family's loyalty, his freedom. The trap will fail without it. Graham will know immediately if I bring him a manufactured copy. And when you are required to place the original into federal evidence, I follow it. Even if it incriminates me. Yes. The answer hurt us. Both. Theron stared at me for a long time. Then he turned and walked toward the rear of the warehouse. A secure vehicle waited beyond the loading bay. He did not ask me to follow. I did anyway. The private vault was not inside the penthouse. It lay beneath an old Kassaris shipping office near the river, behind steel doors requiring Theron's handprint, voice authorization, and 2 separate codes. He opened the final compartment. A thick black ledger rested alone inside. No digital copy. No protective case. Just years of power written in ink. Theron lifted it and held it out to me. I could not immediately take it. Once this enters federal custody, I may not be able to protect you from it. I am not asking for protection. Nico will accuse you of sacrificing the family. He may be right. Your allies may turn against you. They were never allies if truth makes them enemies. I looked at the ledger. This could destroy your empire. Theron stepped closer and placed it into my hands. You wanted proof I never used you to save my empire. His fingers closed mine around the cover. Take the empire. The weight of it settled against my palms. Evidence. Confession. Sacrifice. Trust. I knew that if the pages established federal crimes, I might be required to prosecute the man who had just placed them in my hands. Theron knew it too. Neither of us pretended otherwise. The sealed submission went to the Office of Professional Responsibility and the Department of Justice Inspector General the following morning. I included the recording of Graham revealing protected details, the altered toxicology results, the clone credential analysis, the archive access records, the intercepted messages from 6 years earlier, the forged affidavit, and a protected proffer describing the Kassaris ledger without yet surrendering the original pages. An acting supervisor outside Graham's chain contacted me through an encrypted line. My administrative leave would remain publicly in place. Privately, I was authorized to participate in the final evidentiary hearing under the Inspector General's supervision. We built the plan in a secured room Graham's office could not access. Dr. Cross would authenticate the original toxicology result. Daniel Voss would explain the altered timestamp. The cloned Gala credential would establish manipulation inside federal custody. The archive records would connect Graham's authorization to the leaked photographs. The forged affidavit and intercepted messages would expose his earlier scheme. The damaged drive would be decrypted under court supervision. And Graham would be forced to deny knowledge under oath before the evidence proved otherwise. Theron sat across from me during the final preparation. You will have to testify fully. Yes. No selective invocation. No protected half-answers. I understand. You will admit that you withheld the wine room conversation, obstructed the investigation, and used illegal surveillance to obtain evidence. Yes. I cannot promise immunity. Theron leaned forward. I am not asking you to save me. His eyes held mine. I am asking you to finish what they stopped us from doing 6 years ago. The night before the hearing, Graham learned that Senator Lang's drive would enter the courthouse under federal escort. A compromised deputy marshal received a private order through an encrypted government channel. Intercept the evidence case. Destroy the drive before decryption. On the morning the court reconvened, I stood inside the secured evidence intake room and waited for the courier. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. An Inspector General agent entered with an empty hand and a bloodless face. The transport arrived. The evidence did not. Somewhere between the courthouse loading dock and the secured courtroom floor, the case containing Senator Lang's drive had disappeared. Chapter 9 Under Oath. The evidence case containing Senator Lang's drive had disappeared inside a federal courthouse. Graham Holbrook knew it. He sat behind the government table with 2 attorneys from the Department of Justice, his expression composed as Judge Harwood entered the courtroom. The gallery was full. Reporters occupied every available seat. Inspector General agents stood beside the doors. Nico sat at the defense table wearing the same controlled expression he had carried through the first 5 days of trial, but his hands were locked together beneath the table. Theron sat behind him. He looked at me once. The glance contained no panic. That was when I knew he remembered the plan. Graham rose before the judge finished settling his papers. Your Honor, the evidence that supposedly justified this hearing has failed to arrive. The government respectfully requests that these proceedings be cancelled until the defense produces the physical device it claims will exonerate the defendant. I remained seated. Judge Harwood looked toward the Inspector General's acting supervisor. Is the evidence missing? A transport case was intercepted between the secured loading dock and evidence intake. Graham spread his hands. Then there is nothing to authenticate. There is. Every face in the courtroom turned toward me. Graham's attorney rose. Ms. Mercer is on administrative leave and has no authority to address this court. I stood. Under sealed authorization from the Department of Justice Inspector General, I have been assigned as special counsel for this evidentiary hearing. The attorney looked at Graham. For the first time that morning, his composure shifted. Only slightly. Enough. Graham recovered quickly. Even special counsel cannot present evidence that does not exist. The stolen transport contained a decoy. Silence spread through the courtroom. An Inspector General agent carried a black evidence box to the prosecution table. I opened it. The repaired marble chess queen rested inside. A thin silver fracture divided the pale stone. Theron had once repaired it because I broke it during an argument. He had preserved the fracture because pretending it never broke would have been another lie. Now that visible wound had carried the truth through courthouse security while Graham's people chased an empty case. I lifted the queen and pressed the concealed release beneath its base. The lower section opened. Senator Lang's damaged drive rested inside. Nico exhaled. Graham's attorney stepped toward the bench. We object. The chain of custody is compromised. The drive was transferred under sealed Inspector General supervision before today's transport. The decoy was created after forensic imaging. The original has remained secured inside this courtroom since 6:40 this morning. A forensic examiner rose from the first row. The serial number and internal signature have been verified. Judge Harwood looked at Graham. Your objection is overruled. Decryption will continue under court supervision. Graham's mouth tightened. His attorney tried again. Then Ms. Mercer must be removed. Her undisclosed relationship with Theron Kassaris makes her incapable of acting impartially. Judge Harwood's expression hardened. Her personal history is part of the alleged misconduct this court has convened to examine. The Inspector General has authenticated sufficient evidence to permit her participation. He looked toward me. Proceed carefully, Ms. Mercer. Yes, Your Honor. I returned the queen to the evidence box. The forensic examiner connected the drive to an isolated terminal beside the clerk. The progress bar appeared on the courtroom monitor. 28%. Theron rose when his name was called. He walked past me and entered the witness box for the second time. The clerk administered the oath. Judge Harwood addressed him directly. Mr. Kassaris, you previously invoked your right against self-incrimination. Do you understand that answering questions today may expose you to federal prosecution? Yes. Do you intend to invoke that right again? No, a murmur moved through the gallery. Theron's attorney leaned toward the microphone. For the record, my client is waiving his Fifth Amendment privilege concerning Senator Lang's murder, the concealment of related evidence, and the conduct described in his sealed proffer. Judge Harwood nodded. You may begin. I approached the witness stand. This time, Theron did not look at me as the woman he had lost. He looked at me as the prosecutor to whom he had given the truth. Were you present when Graham Holbrook greeted Senator Everett Lang at the midnight masque? Yes. The courtroom stirred. Graham remained motionless. Describe what you saw. Holbrook approached Senator Lang near the East Ballroom entrance. He held a ceremonial fountain pen in his right hand. He placed his left hand around the senator's wrist and pressed the pen against the skin below his palm. Did Senator Lang react? He flinched. Holbrook apologized and claimed the pen's clasp had caught him. What happened afterward? Lang rubbed his wrist. Within minutes, He began sweating and appeared disoriented. Where did you go? To the private wine rooms beneath the ballroom. Were you alone? Not initially. Who joined you? Theron looked directly at Graham. Graham Holbrook. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harwood struck his gavel. Order. I continued. What did Mr. Holbrook say? He asked whether my brother had received anything from Senator Lang. Did he identify what he believed Nico received? A digital drive containing shipping and contractor records. Had Senator Lang's death been announced? No. Did Mr. Holbrook know the senator was dying? Yes. How? He told me Senator Lang had become a liability and would not survive the night. Graham's attorney stood. Objection. Fabrication designed to protect the witness's brother. Overruled. You may challenge credibility on cross-examination. I kept my attention on Theron. What did Mr. Holbrook demand? That I recover the drive, surrender it to him, and destroy the original Kassaris shipping records connected to the Meridian Initiative. What did he threaten if he refused? Nico would be charged with Senator Lang's murder. Sloane's relationship with me would be exposed. Evidence would appear showing that she had compromised federal investigations. And I would be connected to Lang's death. The use of my first name drew another murmur. I did not allow it to distract me. Did you report that conversation? No, why not? I had no recording. No physical proof. Holbrook controlled the office investigating the murder, and I believed Ms. Mercer remained loyal to him. So you withheld evidence? Yes. You obstructed a federal investigation? Yes. You used unlawful surveillance to obtain government records? Yes. You allowed Nico Kassaris to stand trial while you attempted to gather proof privately? Yes. Nico looked down. Theron did not. Did you intend to expose Graham Holbrook through lawful channels? No. What did you intend? To remove the threat without involving the government. The admission sharpened every person in the room. You intended to kill him. Theron's gaze held mine. If I could prove he had ordered the attack against Sloane, yes. His attorney closed his eyes briefly. I continued because protecting him with softer questions would have destroyed the meaning of his testimony. You understood that testifying today could expose you to prosecution for obstruction, illegal surveillance, and conspiracy. Yes. Why testify? Because the truth belongs in the record, even when it condemns me. I stepped back. Graham's attorney approached. You love Ms. Mercer? Yes. You want your brother freed? Yes. You expect this court to believe you would not lie to accomplish both? Yes. You fabricated a political conspiracy, manipulated a compromised former lover, and manufactured evidence so you could reclaim the woman who abandoned you. Theron's expression did not change. If reclaiming Sloane required a lie, I would have lost her the moment she discovered it. The attorney glanced toward me. Your relationship gives you every motive to coordinate testimony. Our relationship is the reason she asked the questions most likely to imprison me. No one in the courtroom moved. Graham's attorney returned to his seat without another question. The drive reached 46%. I called Dr. Julian Cross. He authenticated the preliminary toxicology result omitted from the final autopsy report. Senator Lang's blood contained a synthetic cardiac compound, he testified. It produced progressive arrhythmia and vascular collapse. Death would not have occurred immediately after administration. How was the compound delivered? The concentration and puncture wound were consistent with a microneedle. Could it have been administered before Senator Lang entered Suite Aurelia? Yes. Would he have remained conscious long enough to meet Nico Kassaris? Yes. Did you alter the official report? Cross lowered his head. Yes. Why? Holbrook's office ordered a retest. The secondary sample disappeared. Investigators threatened my medical license and my family if I included the original result. Graham's attorney objected. Judge Harwood overruled him. Daniel Voss testified next. He admitted the credential timestamp shown to the jury was false. He described the unidentified federal technician, the payment made toward his daughter's medical treatment, and the threats that forced him to authenticate the altered report. A cybersecurity specialist proved that Nico's credential had been cloned after entering federal custody. An archive examiner authenticated the watermark embedded in the leaked photographs of Theron and me. Graham's executive credential had opened the sealed file 48 hours before publication. The drive reached 63%. I introduced the forged affidavit. A forensic document examiner tied the printed pages to a restricted printer once housed inside Graham's private office suite. The ink correction in the margin matched entries in his authenticated trial notebooks. Then I played the recording from my meeting with him. Graham's voice filled the courtroom. Because the drive was damaged then, he touched the senator's left hand and, "Bring me the drive and the ledger before the court reconvenes." I stopped the audio. Mr. Holbrook knew the missing evidence was a drive. He knew it was damaged. He knew which hand Nico touched while attempting to hold Senator Lang upright. Graham rose. "Because Ms. Mercer told me." I turned toward him. "No," his attorney caught his sleeve. Graham ignored him. "We met privately several times. She was desperate to save her reputation and provided information obtained from Kassaris. The meeting was recorded from the moment I entered your office." I looked toward the technician. "Play the beginning." The courtroom speakers carried the sound of Graham greeting me. Then my words, "I can give you Theron Kassaris." Every sentence followed in order. At no point did I mention the drive before Graham did. At no point did I reveal its damage or Nico's contact with the senator's left hand. Graham's face changed. The polished mentor disappeared. For one moment, I saw the man who had believed every person in the room could be controlled. "You were sleeping with him while prosecuting his brother. Nothing you present is clean. My relationship is not the evidence." I turned toward the jury box, though no jury sat there now. "Your knowledge is." The drive reached 100%. The forensic examiner froze. Judge Harwood leaned forward. "What have you found?" "A directory labeled Lang, contingency." The folder opened across the courtroom monitor. Payment records appeared first. Transfers from Holbrook's Shell Foundation to the cybersecurity contractor that deleted the gala footage. An instruction to clone Nico's credential. An authorization directing Dr. Cross's secondary blood sample to be removed from federal storage. The order to alter the toxicology report. The surveillance photographs of Theron and me. The unedited audio from 6 years earlier. Theron's real voice played through the speakers. "She trusts me. I have to tell her everything before Holbrook realizes what I found." The sentence I had heard was not, "She trusts me." "She tells me everything." The recording had been cut apart to reverse its meaning. Then the final message appeared. "Mercer and Kassaris have access to opposite sides of the Port inquiry. Prevent comparison. Separate them before either shares evidence. Use the relationship to establish mutual betrayal. Authorized by Graham Holbrook." The words remained on the screen. 6 years of hatred reduced to an instruction inside a contingency file. Nico's attorney rose slowly. "Your Honor, the defense moves for immediate dismissal of every murder-related count." The prosecutor appointed to replace Graham did not stand. He looked toward the Inspector General agents and then at Judge Harwood. "The United States does not oppose dismissal of the murder counts." Nico closed his eyes. Theron remained still. Judge Harwood ordered Nico's murder charges dismissed and directed that his remaining obstruction conduct be addressed separately. Then he looked at Graham. United States Marshals will take Mr. Holbrook into custody pending investigation of murder, evidence tampering, obstruction, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. Two marshals moved toward the government table. The fire alarm began screaming. Red lights flashed along the courtroom walls. The gallery surged to its feet. "Remain in place," Judge Harwood shouted. Smoke entered beneath the rear doors. A marshal seized Graham's arm. "This way." He pulled him toward a secured service corridor as the other officers attempted to contain the reporters and evacuate the witnesses. I saw the marshal's face. He was the same man who had signed the transfer record for the missing decoy case. "Stop him." The service door slammed. Theron moved before anyone else. By the time agents forced the corridor open, the stairwell was empty. The compromised marshal's radio lay crushed beneath the emergency exit. Graham had vanished. Theron's phone vibrated. He read the message once. "He is heading toward a private airfield." I caught his arm before he reached the door. "You are not killing him." Theron looked down at my hand and then into my eyes. "Then reach him before I do." Chapter 10. Every year returned. Graham Holbrook had escaped a federal courthouse with the help of a compromised deputy marshal. Theron intended to reach him first. I intended to make certain he did not. I released Theron's arm in the service corridor and called the Inspector General's command line. "Holbrook is heading toward a private airfield. Freeze every passport, travel document, flight clearance, and aircraft associated with him or the Meridian Compact." The acting supervisor responded immediately. "We need the airfield. I am obtaining it." I ended the call and contacted the Federal Aviation Administration's Emergency Operations Center. My authority as special counsel was limited, but Judge Harwood's detention order was not. Within minutes, Holbrook's passport was flagged and every registered aircraft connected to his known foundations had been ordered grounded. It would not be enough. Graham had spent years creating routes that did not officially exist. Theron was already moving toward the courthouse exit. "Where are you going?" "To find him. Federal agents are handling it. They spent 6 years helping him. Some of them. One is enough." The elevator opened. Theron entered. I stepped inside before the doors closed. His gaze dropped to me. "This is not a negotiation." "No. It is a warning." "To whom?" "You." The elevator began descending. "If you reach Graham first, you do not kill him. You have already said that. And you have not agreed." Theron's face held the same controlled stillness he had worn on the witness stand. "He murdered Senator Lang. He framed Nico. He sent men to take you. He destroyed 6 years of our lives. All of which becomes harder to prove if you execute him beside an airplane. The proof is already in the record. The Meridian Compact is larger than Graham. We need him alive to identify everyone else. I do not need him to identify anyone. I do." The elevator doors opened into the secured garage. Theron's car waited with its engine running. Inspector General vehicles were already surging toward the exit. I turned toward the nearest agent. "Trace Holbrook's political donors for private aviation assets. Search shell companies connected to Aegis and Meridian contractors. He will use an airfield outside the FAA's immediate commercial network." Theron spoke into his phone in Greek, his tone low and absolute. I recognized only fragments. "Ports. Drivers. Airfields. Close every road." His criminal network began moving before the federal request cleared its first database. 2 systems. 2 kinds of power. One destination. I entered the government vehicle. Theron caught the door before I closed it. Stay behind the agents. No, Sloane. You do not command me. His eyes narrowed. No. I remember. He released the door. Our vehicles left separately. Federal authorities froze 3 aircraft within 15 minutes. None contained Graham. His diplomatic contacts attempted to override the grounding orders, claiming that one jet was required for an emergency international delegation. The request carried the signature of a deputy secretary whose name had appeared in Senator Lang's contingency file. I forwarded it to the Inspector General. Theron's people found the real route first. A driver associated with the compromised marshal had abandoned a government vehicle near a private toll road. Traffic cameras showed a second car heading north toward an airfield owned by Bellwether Strategic Logistics. Bellwether appeared in the Kassaris ledger beside undeclared defense cargo and protected port inspections. The private hangar lay 40 minutes outside the city. Theron's convoy arrived from the east. Federal vehicles approached from the south. I saw his black sedan through the trees as both roads converged. He had not outrun the law. He had guided it. The aircraft inside the hangar had already begun warming its engines. Federal agents sealed the access road while an aviation unit blocked the runway. The hangar doors remained closed. A live line connected my phone to the Inspector General's recording center. Holbrook may speak to me. Do not enter unless a signal or a weapon is raised. The tactical commander shook his head. You are not going inside alone. He believes I still want my career restored. That is the only leverage he has left. He knows you exposed him in court. He also believes he created me. Theron approached from behind the vehicles. No jacket. His white shirt still marked by smoke from the courthouse evacuation. You are not entering alone. I looked at the tactical commander. Secure Mr. Kassaris. Several agents shifted uneasily. Theron's expression became almost insulting. Try. I stepped closer before the situation became another disaster. Graham needs to believe I came to bargain. He escaped because you exposed him. He escaped with no records, no diplomatic protection, and nowhere safe to land. He has one remaining weapon. You. My career. Theron stared at me. He still believes those are the same thing. A door opened along the side of the hangar. The compromised marshal appeared with a gun held low beside his leg. Mercer goes in, he called. Alone. Theron's hand moved toward his waistband. I caught his wrist. Trust me. The words held 6 years between them. His gaze searched mine. Then his hand lowered. I entered the hangar. The door closed behind me. The private jet waited near the far wall, its cabin lights glowing. Graham stood at the base of the stairs with his tie removed and his silver hair disordered for the first time in all the years I had known him. The marshal remained near the door behind me. His weapon pointed between my shoulder blades. Graham looked at my empty hands. You came without the ledger. It is in federal custody. And the drive? Entered into evidence. You destroyed your own future to protect a criminal. I exposed a murderer. Graham's mouth tightened. You exposed a structure you do not understand. The Meridian Compact. Do you know how many careers depend upon the contracts you placed on that courtroom screen? How many international agreements collapse if those shipping routes become public? How many intelligence operations rely on cargo that cannot appear on official manifests? You murdered a senator to protect them. I prevented one self-righteous man from detonating the government he claimed to serve. You framed Nico Kassaris. He was available. The casual answer chilled me more than denial would have. Graham moved closer. Nico was already involved in criminal shipping. Theron's organization had sufficient blood on its hands. One more body would have changed nothing. It changed everything. Only because Theron could not allow you to prosecute his brother. He testified because Nico was innocent of murder. He testified because you were standing on the other side of the courtroom. Graham smiled faintly. You still do not understand what you are to him. I understand better than you hoped. You are his weakness. No. That was your mistake. I kept the phone inside my pocket, the live line open. Graham's every word traveled directly to the federal team outside. You can still survive this. My reinstatement. More than that. The department needs a public explanation. You were manipulated by Theron Kassaris. You became emotionally compromised. You uncovered evidence, realized your error, and helped contain a national security breach. You want me to retract what happened in court. I want you to place it in context. A context that leaves you innocent. A context that leaves the government standing. And Theron? Prison. Perhaps a protected agreement if he surrenders enough. Nico. His murder charges can remain dismissed. The obstruction case will ensure his silence. You are still offering to create my future. I created the first one. The words came with quiet conviction. I taught you how to question witnesses. How to persuade juries. How to survive rooms filled with men waiting for you to fail. You taught me to follow evidence. I taught you which evidence mattered. There it was. The belief beneath everything he had done. Truth was not something Graham discovered. It was something he selected. I took one step closer. Why did you separate me from Theron? His eyes changed. The question pleased him. Perhaps because he had waited 6 years for one of us to understand the elegance of what he had done. You had access to the federal investigation. Theron had access to the original shipping records. Separately, neither of you could see the entire structure. Together, we could. You were beginning to share too much. We never exchanged protected information. You did not need to. You trusted each other. Eventually, one of you would have asked the correct question. So you forged the affidavit. Yes. The admission entered the live line. You edited Theron's recording. Yes. You intercepted our messages. Of course. And the attack on my car. A contractor created urgency. Fear makes intelligent people accept simple explanations. You left the Kassaris marker. You needed to believe Theron was dangerous to you. He was dangerous to your conspiracy. Graham's expression sharpened. Together, you were intolerable. The words struck with the weight of 6 stolen years. Why not kill us? Death creates investigations. Betrayal creates silence. He sounded almost proud. I expected you to prosecute him eventually. I expected him to destroy your career in return. Powerful people are easiest to control when their pain feels personal. A sound moved near the rear of the hangar. The marshal turned. Theron stepped from behind the aircraft. I did not know how he had entered. I only saw Graham's face change when he recognized him. The compromised marshal raised his weapon. Theron moved first. He struck the marshal's wrist, forced the gun aside, and drove him against the metal stairs. The weapon slid across the floor. The fight ended in seconds. The marshal collapsed beneath Theron's grip. Theron took the gun and aimed it at Graham. Graham did not retreat. Instead, he smiled. There he is. Theron. His eyes remained fixed on the man before him. Graham stepped closer to the barrel. You waited at the conservatory. She waited at the station. 53 minutes, was it? Theron's face became empty. You read the surveillance reports, Graham continued. You knew how long she waited after you discovered the routing records. Theron raised the weapon. I watched both of you rebuild yourselves around the wound, Graham said. 6 years. Entire empires and careers created from one forged note. Stop talking. But he wanted Theron to fire. A dead Graham would become a victim of Mafia vengeance. His remaining allies would bury the Meridian Compact beneath classified investigations and sealed proceedings. You can kill me, Graham said. But she will spend the rest of her life proving that loving you did not corrupt her. Theron's finger tightened near the trigger. I stepped between them. The barrel angled away from me immediately. His control remained, even now. Move, Sloane. No, he sent men to take you. And they need you to choose what happens next. He chose it 6 years ago. Only if you let him finish. Theron looked at me. I saw the wine room, the intercepted message, the preserved dress, and every violent intention he had surrendered to place the truth in my hands. Do not become the ending he wrote for us. The gun remained raised. Then Theron lowered it. Not because Graham deserved mercy. Because we deserved an ending Graham had not designed. The side doors burst open. Federal agents flooded the hangar. The compromised marshal was restrained. Graham was forced to his knees and placed in handcuffs. He looked at me as an agent read the charges. Murder. Conspiracy. Evidence tampering. Witness intimidation. Obstruction of justice. His expression held no remorse. Only disbelief that the woman he had shaped had become the evidence against him. The legal consequences took months to negotiate, but their direction became clear the following day. Nico was formally cleared of Senator Lang's murder. He accepted responsibility for removing the drive, concealing evidence, lying to investigators, and obstructing the federal inquiry. His attorneys negotiated a sentence that included restricted confinement followed by supervised release and mandatory cooperation with the Meridian investigation. Theron's agreement was more extensive. He surrendered the Kassaris organization's illegal port network. The original ledger entered federal custody. Corrupt shipping contracts were terminated. Bribed inspectors, protected intermediaries, and criminal allies were identified. Several members of his organization abandoned him before the ink dried. Others called his cooperation betrayal. Theron accepted both. In return, prosecutors agreed to resolve his obstruction, unlawful surveillance, and related conduct through a restrictive federal cooperation agreement rather than a life-destroying indictment. He retained the legitimate Kassaris hotels, the private clubs, the lawful shipping interests, the family wealth no longer tied to undeclared cargo and political protection. He remained powerful. But the empire he had inherited would never again be the one he had placed into my hands. The Office of Professional Responsibility cleared me of knowingly compromising the prosecution or using federal authority to punish Theron. The report described my failure to disclose the full history before accepting Nico's case as an error created by sealed counterintelligence instructions and deliberate internal manipulation. The department offered reinstatement. Then a promotion. I declined both. The Deputy Attorney General stared across the conference table. You are walking away after proving the most important corruption case of your career. I am walking away because this institution protected Graham Holbrook until I forced it to look at the evidence. We are correcting that. You are correcting what became public. And what will you do instead? Practice law. I left before he could offer me another version of the future Graham once promised. The penthouse doors opened that evening. Theron stood near the windows. The rooms no longer felt preserved. Evidence boxes occupied the dining table. Several paintings connected to criminal intermediaries had been removed. The locked wine cabinet stood open. The bedroom wardrobe was empty where my ivory dress had once hung. A long garment box rested across the bed. I touched the lid. You removed it after my statement. Yes. I thought you destroyed it. I considered it. What changed? Theron stood behind me. I no longer want to live inside a preserved grave. I opened the box. The ivory silk lay inside, carefully folded rather than displayed like a relic. A memory returned to its proper place. Not erased. No longer worshipped. Theron placed the black engagement ring box beside it. The same box I had seen inside his safe. He opened it. The ring was elegant and severe, an oval diamond held between two dark stones, set in gold. He did not reach for my hand. I cannot return the years they took. No, you cannot. Pain moved through his expression, but he did not look away. Then give me the rest. I closed my fingers around the ring box. The rest cannot be preserved inside locked rooms. I know. It cannot be built on surveillance, possession, or deciding what I need without asking me. I know. We do not pretend the fracture disappeared. Theron looked toward the chess queen resting beside the evidence files. No, we build it honestly. One day at a time. He held my gaze. One day at a time. I did not put on the ring. Not yet. I carried it with me into the bathroom. My perfume stood where Theron had placed it after removing it from the safe. For 6 years, he had kept the bottle locked beside an engagement ring and a dress I had abandoned. I picked it up and set it on the marble counter beside his watch. A place where it could be used. Where it could be knocked over. Where the scent could fade and be replaced. For the first time in 6 years, nothing between us belonged to a memory being preserved. It belonged to the life we had finally chosen to live. Epilogue: The Black Orchid. 6 months after Graham Holbrook's arrest, the country was still discovering how many powerful men had mistaken secrecy for permanence. The Meridian Compact did not collapse all at once. It broke apart in controlled explosions. A federal judge resigned before sunrise. 2 defense contractors lost government clearance. 3 elected officials announced sudden retirements before sealed indictments became public. Investigators uncovered shell foundations, altered inspection records, protected shipping routes, and payments hidden beneath national security classifications. Graham remained in federal custody awaiting trial. His attorneys argued that exposing the full conspiracy would endanger international agreements and intelligence operations. For once, fear did not stop the evidence from moving forward. Senator Everett Lang's murder became the center of the government's case. The forged affidavit, altered toxicology report, cloned credential, intercepted messages, and surveillance archive became evidence in half a dozen others. Graham had spent years teaching me that one strong case could force an entire institution to confront what it wanted to ignore. He had never expected the case to be built against him. Nico returned to the Kassaris shipping offices under the terms of his obstruction agreement. He served the custodial portion of his negotiated sentence in a restricted federal facility, then entered supervised release with mandatory cooperation requirements. Theron placed him in charge of the legitimate shipping division before Nico had finished complaining about the restrictions on his travel. The company no longer moved undeclared cargo. No protected containers crossed federal ports. Every manifest passed through independent review. Nico claimed legitimacy was painfully dull. He also worked 12-hour days rebuilding the business. Theron's empire had changed. The criminal alliances that once made politicians whisper his name had weakened. Several former associates refused to speak to him after he surrendered the original ledger. Others discovered that the legitimate Kassaris organization remained too valuable to abandon. He still controlled hotels, private clubs, real estate, and lawful shipping interests on 2 continents. He still entered a room and changed its temperature. But the violence beneath the empire had been cut away. What remained was formidable because it no longer required fear to survive. My own office occupied the top floor of a restored courthouse building overlooking the river. The Mercer Legal Foundation represented whistleblowers, wrongfully accused defendants, and people whose lives had been destroyed by government corruption. The department had offered me reinstatement twice. I declined twice. My work still involved courtrooms, evidence, and dangerous men who believed institutions belonged to them. The difference was that no one decided which truths I was permitted to pursue. The repaired marble chess queen stood on the corner of my desk. Its silver fracture caught the afternoon light. Visitors sometimes asked why I displayed a damaged piece from an incomplete set. I told them it reminded me that repair did not require pretending something had never broken. Theron said that answer was too sentimental. He was the one who placed fresh black orchids beside it every Monday morning. The penthouse no longer resembled the preserved grave I had entered during the investigation. Photographs now occupied the shelves. Not surveillance images or newspaper clippings. Real photographs. Nico laughing at a family dinner. Theron standing beside me outside the foundation on opening day, refusing to smile for the camera until I threatened to frame the worst picture. One of us on the terrace after a summer storm, my hair wild, his shirt open at the throat, neither of us prepared for the photograph his housekeeper captured. My legal books filled half the library. My clothes occupied more than half the wardrobe, though Theron disputed the arithmetic. Fresh flowers stood on the dining table. My chipped coffee cup remained beside the espresso machine because I had chosen to keep it. The ivory dress no longer hung alone behind a closed door. It rested inside the wardrobe beside clothes I wore every day. My perfume stood on the bathroom counter. The safe where Theron once preserved it now contained legal agreements, property documents, and a collection of letters neither of us permitted the other to read without permission. We had spent 6 months learning that honesty was not the same as unrestricted access. Love did not require possession. Trust did not require blindness. Some mornings we still argued like opposing counsel. Some nights we stopped pretending either of us wanted the argument to end quickly. We rebuilt the relationship the way we had promised. One day at a time. Theron brought me to the rooftop conservatory on a cold evening in early spring. He offered no explanation. That alone should have warned me. The private elevator opened beneath a glass ceiling washed in moonlight. Black orchids bloomed along both sides of the narrow stone path. 6 years earlier, I had stopped beside those flowers and told Theron they looked like something beautiful that had learned how to survive in the dark. I had not known he decided he loved me that night. He had not known how much darkness we would be required to survive. Theron stood beside the center fountain wearing a black suit without a tie. No guards waited inside. No photographers. No family witnesses. Only the man I had once abandoned, the truth we had nearly discovered too late, and hundreds of black petals unfolding beneath the glass. You planned this. Yes. That admission must have been painful. I have admitted to federal crimes with less hesitation. I approached him. You dislike surprises. I dislike surprises I do not control. And this one. His eyes moved over my face. This one depends entirely on you. That was when I noticed the black ring box in his hand. Not a new one. The original. The box that had waited inside his safe for 6 years. Theron opened it. The oval diamond rested between 2 dark stones, unchanged except for a narrow engraving inside the gold band. I looked closer. The date was the day Graham Holbrook had been arrested. The day Theron lowered his weapon. The day we chose truth over revenge. "I bought this ring 3 days before you left me," Theron said. "For 6 years, I treated it as proof of what was stolen." His voice remained controlled, but his fingers tightened slightly around the box. "I do not want it to represent that anymore." He lowered himself before me. Theron Kassaris did not kneel easily. Not before governments. Not before enemies. Not even before the traditions of his own family. But he knelt before me without command, bargain, or presumption. "Sloane Mercer, will you marry me?" I looked down at the Greek Don who had once believed love meant protecting every vulnerable thing behind locked doors. His expression was perfectly composed. Except for the pulse beating hard at the base of his throat. I allowed the silence to continue. 1 second. 2. 5. Theron's eyes narrowed. "Sloane." I smiled. "You are very impatient for a man who waited 6 years. I was misinformed during those years. You were still impatient." His jaw tightened. I let him wait 1 breath longer. "Yes." The word changed him. Not dramatically. Theron was not a man who broke open for the world. But the tension left his shoulders. The darkness in his eyes softened, and something he had guarded longer than his empire became visible only to me. He rose and placed the ring on my finger. It fit as though the 6 lost years had never altered the shape of my hand. Theron brought my knuckles to his mouth. "Cardia Mao." My heart. He had not called me that since before our separation. The endearment carried no ownership now. Only recognition. I touched his face. "When did you remove my perfume from the safe?" "The morning after you returned to the penthouse." "You never told me." "You placed it on the bathroom counter." "That does not answer the question." His arms settled around my waist. I no longer needed to preserve the scent. "Why?" "Because you leave it throughout our home every morning." Behind him, black orchids opened beneath the glass. Once, they had represented beauty surviving alone in darkness. Now they surrounded us beneath a clear sky. For 6 years, I had believed justice meant proving who deserved to be punished. Theron slid the ring onto my finger beneath a canopy of black orchids. Perhaps justice was also this. Finding the truth after the sentence had already been carried out. Looking at the man I had been taught to hate. And giving him every year we still had left. Sloane and Theron lost 6 years to a lie neither of them created. 6 years of anger. 6 years of unanswered questions. 6 years of loving each other from opposite sides of a betrayal. But when the truth finally came, Theron did more than ask for forgiveness. He placed his empire, his freedom, and his future in Sloane's hands, and trusted her not to destroy him. And Sloane did not return because she had forgotten the pain. She returned because, for the first time, they were finally standing before each other without secrets. Their second chance was not perfect. It was honest. And sometimes, the most powerful love is not the love that never breaks. It is the love that survives the truth, and chooses to begin again. Thank you for listening. May the love meant for you always be brave enough to tell the truth, strong enough to fight for you, and wise enough to choose you when it matters most. Until next time, stay ruined.